So we'll go ahead and get started as soon as we hit 9:01.
This conference will now be recorded.
So good morning, everyone. Can we have the commissioners please turn on their cameras so I can see who's here? Thank you so much. So I see Commissioner Dunleavy, Commissioner Kalpikoff. I think I heard Commissioner Ferrante. Is she here? No. Commissioner Medrano, is he here? Missing Commissioner Medrano. Commissioner Lapis. There she is. Okay, so we've got Commissioner Ferrante. I think I see Osagura. Commissioner Osagura, are you coming? Are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. But the interesting, so when I looked back at the who was on this committee, yeah, it said Manuel Osagura. That would be an odd twin. So I think it was you, Commissioner Alex Osagura. I don't believe Commissioner Medrano was on this committee when we set it up.
That is correct. I think someone just messed up on that.
Okay. So CalRecycle, if you could update the website, that would be great. So we have myself, Commissioner Osagura, Commissioner Ferrante, Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Dunleavy, so we're, and Kalpikoff. So do we have Commissioner Lapis? He's the other one I have. I don't see him. Okay, if somebody could text Commissioner Lapis to see if he can get on, that would be great, so we can go ahead and get started. First, welcome back and Happy New Year. We are now in 2022, which feels like we're in another twilight zone here, but can't believe we are in 2022 and excited also for the year. So I hope everybody had a nice rest, and we decided to have this first meeting of the Thermoforms Committee, which I'm hoping actually, to be honest, for myself, is our last, because we're going to get a lot of data today, a lot of presentations, and I think after today, I'm not sure how much new information we're going to get to make a decision. It will likely just be up to all of us to figure out what more we might need in order to make a good policy that we can all agree on. So with that, we'll go ahead. We've done the roll call. We're short one commissioner or committee member.
I'm on. I apologize.
Oh, you are on. Oh, great. Great. Welcome back, Nick. So we'll go ahead and move on from agenda item number 1. We've got a full meeting of 7 committee members. And I want to apologize. I had thought that I had asked that we have on the agenda discussion of who's going to chair and whatever, and somehow it didn't get on there. I didn't even realize it till this morning. But as I said, everybody mute yourselves if you're not speaking, so we can hear the tapping and other noises in the background. Thank you. Whoever, please mute yourselves if you're not speaking. There's 3 people that are unmuted right now, and that's going to cause us a lot of problems. So could you, thank you. Whoever CO, that would be helpful. Thank you. So anyway, as I said, I hope this is the only committee meeting, because I think we're going to get a lot of information today, but we might not. And if we do, then we can talk at the end if somebody else would like to chair the committee and so forth. So let's just get through this one today, and we can talk about that at the end. And I do send my apologies, because I thought I had put that on the agenda. So our second agenda item is public comment review for items related to thermoform policy. And I said that because I don't want to have everything the commission talks about read into the record for comments. There have been very specific comments that have been posted for this meeting, specifically in the issue of thermoform. So if CalRecycle could please read those to us so we make sure we're all caught up on the public comments.
Yeah, hi, this is Emily Zukowski from CalRecycle. So good morning. Our first public comment is from Larry Phil. There was no organization listed. So the comment is, you are proposing that residents sort their food scraps, yet nothing is done about all the fast food garbage that contains food and paper and plastic packaging. It would take me a month to equal 1 day at any fast food store. That is the end of that comment. Then we have another comment from Steve Vito from Navito Management Group, LLC. Submitted with respect. I'm a 30-plus year post-consumer plastic recycling professional focused on rPET. I have been a sustainability director for a national food packaging PET thermoforming company and past APR board chairman. My main message is that PET thermoforms are recyclable within the U.S. post-consumer plastic industry and should never be classified as not recyclable. Whether sorted apart from PET bottles or included with PET bottle bales, the thermoforms are being recycled. Granted, sorting thermoforms for separate recycling away from PET bottles is preferred because of varying technical characteristics between bottles and thermoforms. However, your 2% threshold of thermoform inclusion in bales does not acknowledge that for years, U.S. PET reclaimers have accepted 10% thermoforms in their bales. Declaring PET thermoforms as not recyclable just because they are not pre-sorted goes against every effort to increase plastic recycling in this country. Sort thermoforms for recycling. Yes, the right, and that was cut off at 150 words.
Okay.
And then we have one more from Helget from Republic Services. For submitting an industry letter regarding the discussion of thermoforms and want the Commission to be aware of our industry concerns that were formally submitted to the legislature last year. The content of the original letter is below. We have supported minimum content legislation in the past, but the provisions in AB 478, Ting and Irwin will have significant negative impacts on the current recycling system for the benefit of a single form of plastic. Who will bear the cost and in what amount? State of California, the Assembly Appropriation Committee analysis estimated the following costs to the state of California. One-time cost to CalRecycle of $539,000 in fiscal year 2022 to 2023 and $660,000 in fiscal year 2024 to 2025 for additional staff to develop applicable regulations and reporting mechanisms for thermoform producers and assist with data analysis and corrective action plans. Ongoing annual administration and implementation costs beginning in, and that's cut off at 150 words, but all these comments are posted.
Yeah, thank you. And for people who want to know where to see these comments, if you go to the CalRecycle website under Get Involved, you can, there's a drop-down menu, and it's kind of hard to see because it's a color-coded document that says public comments submitted, I think, or posted. So, and then you open that up, and then you sort it by the entire commission so that you can see comments have been submitted just for us. So thank you very much. Really appreciate that, Emily. Are there any thoughts from commissioners on those comments before we move on? Okay, and I've got to open up my chat box to make sure I'm seeing everybody. Very good. All right, well then we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 3, which we thought it would be good to have CalRecycle make the first presentation about the beverage container recycling program and then rollout of the quality incentive payment, which includes the Thermoform QIP process and what they're going to do with that new program, which they've been putting out some information on recently. So I'll turn it over to our CalRecycle staff to give the presentation, and we'll, I'm sure, have questions. Thank you, CalRecycle.
So Chair Sanborn, this is Laura Moreno, and our presenters aren't here yet, but we'll chat them as they're coming in at 9:25, and hopefully they can get on a little sooner.
Okay. Well, there we go for going early. Okay. Well, in that case, I know that, well, we'll have to wait because I know that there's some questions for the CalRecycle staff. Maybe what we should do, would the commissioners like to move on to agenda item 4 and then move back when CalRecycle is here and start with our first presentation so we don't waste everybody's time?
Maybe I'd like to just clarify the comment, the last comment we heard from Republic. I mean, I think I tracked the discussion around the legislation. I don't think the policy that was drafted has the same content as that seemed to raise issues around the legislation where there was a zero limit for bales that would qualify for CRV payment. At least that was my understanding of it. But I know some of the other commissioners here were part of that dialogue. And am I wrong in my understanding that the issue really had to do with that kind of zero threshold for thermoforms and PET bales?
Is Chuck Helgett able to respond verbally, Laura? Or CalRecycle staff? I think he just took himself off of mute, so
Yeah,
if you can
I think he just
Chuck,
unmuted.
go ahead.
Yes, and can you hear me, Heidi? Am I on?
Yes, perfectly. Yep.
Thank you. It's a good question. One of our concerns with the legislation as it was proposed was that very point, was there a zero tolerance or any bales of PET contained any level of thermoform, whether that's consistent with where this committee wants to go. I'm still trying to figure out exactly where you are, what you are trying to achieve. But our opposition to AB 478 absolutely was focused around the fact that whatever the threshold was going to be, targeting commingled rate was not the right approach.
Okay, yeah, we can, I think we can look at the policy recommendation later. But thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, and I see that there's, I think, some CalRecycle staff joining. So Laura, let me know whenever you've got your team here so we can go to the CalRecycle presentation. And I think it's Patty and whoever's CO, could you please mute yourselves when you're not speaking so that we don't have feedback? Do you know how to do that, Patty? There's at the bottom of your screen, there should be a mic, and just click on it so it turns off. I can't hear you, but it still is lit up green. So,
Heidi, I just was able to chat with Hugh, and he is actually not available until 9:25 for the CalRecycle presentation.
okay, well then we'll go ahead and are there any other commissioner comments or responses or further questions of the people that had public comments? I don't see anything in the chat. Please use the asterisk. Very good. All right, then we'll just go ahead and move on from item 2 past item 3. We'll go to item 4, and we'll start with our first presenter. I told them all because we had 6, if you could please keep it to 10 minutes to make sure everybody has time. And I know Octavio Ovitel had to go first. He's got to catch a plane. So we invited him to speak about his recycling processes for PET. So Octavio, are you ready to go? And we did post their presentations on the Commission Google document, and that's linked from the CalRecycle webpage. So if you have any questions, that's where you go to.
Absolutely.
Great. And again, everybody, please, Patty Moore, please mute yourself. And I will mute myself, Octavia, while you go. And I don't know whoever CO is or caller 4, but we're going to have to mute you. CalRecycle, if you could please.
I've been muted the whole time.
Okay. Well, I don't think the noise was coming from you. I think it was from us. There we go. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll go and turn it over to Octavio at this point.
Heidi, can you hear me? I'm at an airport launch. Is my noise okay?
Yes, but I am getting feedback, and there's 2 Patty Moores on here, and one of them is unmuted. So it must be the phone or something. Again, if CalRecycle could mute people who are not speaking, that would be helpful too. Thanks. Go ahead, Octavio. And do you want to show your screen, or do you want us to show your slides for you?
I don't think I'm
It
allowed.
actually sounds like somebody's in a restaurant.
Yeah. I don't think I'm allowed to show my screen.
Okay. Then
I made Octavio a presenter, so you should be
He's on
able
it.
to.
he's in an airport. So maybe, can you, Emily, pull up his PowerPoint? Would that be okay?
Yes, yeah, I will do that.
Next. Thank you. So Octavia, why don't, while she's doing that, go ahead and you can give an introduction on who you are and what you want to talk about.
Sure. Well, Green Impact was founded by me and my brother. We've been recycling PET for the last 16 years. Started with bottles, and then 3 years ago, we started with thermoforms. And we were given the challenge to see if we could recycle 100% post-consumer thermoforms from California when SB 54 was first introduced. And we said, well, we won't know until we try. And until today, we're one of the biggest buyers for 100% post-consumer thermoform bales throughout North America.
Great, we've got your slides up, so you can go ahead and just say next and we'll switch the slides.
And we have a little facility. If you wanna get onto the next slide. We have our small little facility right there in that middle point where Texas and Mexico meet. But if you see all the other points, that's where we are bringing in material from, and most of the places we're delivering material to be put back into new food grade packaging. We partner up with several vendors or programs that are actually recycling or recovering thermoforms, including the Plastic Recycling Corporation of California, who sends us around 10 or 11 loads a month from different MRFs in California. Driscoll's been a great supporter of what we're doing. We have a great program in Oregon in the Northwest with Ridwell subscription program. And we're working with Recyclops, Replenish, and we are expanding our partners to, increase the supply, which is really now our biggest challenge. We want to expand throughout North America, and supply seems to be the challenge. You want to go to the next slide? So like I told you, Driscoll's has been a great partner of us. Last year, they got awarded the Innovator Award by the SPC because they're including Thermoform Clean Wash Flake in their products. They've really committed publicly to using post-consumer thermoforms in their new packaging, and we're happy to support their commitment that we're supplying to most of their converters. So every time I go to a grocery store and I buy a Driscoll's container, I go like, oh wow, that must contain 10% of what we're making in Juarez. Next slide. Right after Christmas, I took a trip to my local wholesale store, and I restocked for New Year's, and I bought a whole bunch of the family favorite, which you can see right here in these pictures. And sorry if I keep this presentation very graphical, but can you see? Yeah, can you see all those big thermoforms? Well, this is just the wholesale retail store. But if we move to the next slide, this is a normal retail store, big market retail store in the U.S. And if you take a look at the next slide, that's another one. So the amount of PET thermoforms that are in the aisles of a retail store today, I think might occupy more aisles than the actual PET bottles that have beverage on them. And I can assure you, because you go buy your beverage containers and you're going to go to one aisle, half of it is going to be on PET, half of it is going to be on aluminum cans. But you go buy all of this stuff, prepared food, pastries, cut fruit, salads, family size, individual size, they're all on PET thermoforms. Do you want to take a next slide, please?
I know, Octavio, I've certainly seen the change in grocery stores just the last few years. There's a lot more thermoforms than there used to be. Clearly.
Absolutely, and COVID actually helped that. People don't want to touch what everybody else is touching. But right after I finished, I brought that home. I stacked it up, I weighed it out, and it's basically 2 pounds. But when I put it in my blue bin, my little recycling bin inside, my in-house blue bin, I basically fill the bin. There's no more space for aluminum cans. There's no more space for my Amazon packages that arrive, at least twice a day. There's no more space for PET bottles or any other recyclables. So it's like, man, what am I going to do with all these recyclables? It's completely overwhelming, the recycling infrastructure today. Next slide. But I wanted to corroborate the data with our partner in the Northwest. I live with my wife and two kids, so we're a household of four. But I asked Ridwell, who's supplying us thermoforms from their subscription program in the Northwest in Oregon, and they were very happy to share the data. They told us, Octavio, the average household in our subscription has 3 members. We pick up around 1.5 pounds of clamshells every other week. And ever since we started accepting thermoforms in our subscription program, our subscribers just skyrocketed because thermoforms are not accepted in their normal curbside program.
And
Next slide, please.
if any commissioners have questions about Ridwell, they're operating, I think, just in Seattle and Portland areas right now, but they're looking to expand across the country, and they're kind of a supplemental service that you pay for. If you have any questions on that?
And actually, I put there the subscription cost for it, $12, and the consumer is paying for it. So that means the consumer wants this stuff to be recycled. I mean, they don't just pick up clamshells; they pick up all these other negative value products for from the haulers, which is batteries, light bulbs, all this stuff that you cannot put on your normal curbside program. Going back to this slide, the U.S. Plastic Pact and all of our members have written a roadmap where they want to take action to ensure that PET non-bottle rigid containers have a minimum content recycling rate of 50%. Now, how are we going to get there if we all know the data? NAPCOR is going to present a lot of more data than I do. I'm just presenting very visual data. But how are we going to get to 50% recovery rate if we only allow a very minimum content in the bottle belts? It is basically impossible. So how do we get there? Is it going to be curbside? Is it going to be drop-off centers, subscription programs, all of the above, a very holistic approach to it, right? But the big question still remains, who's going to pay for it? Because there's a cost to collect it. There's a cost to bail it. There's a cost to take it to a reclaimer. And I know there's a lot of reclaimers or a lot of packaging companies today that would like to get their hands on PET molecules. There's not enough. The demand is so high for rPET, and there's not enough. So who's going to pay for it? I don't know if thermoforms require their own deposit program, EPR, increase home rates to increase, curbside, subscription programs, or again, all of the above, depending. I don't think there's a one solution fits all. And clearly, California is a whole different animal, but Texas, the Northwest, Oregon, I mean, everybody has their own solution. Let's talk to everybody and see what's working and what's not working. Next slide, please. Last month, we ran a trial test with Indorama, which is a big supporter of what we're doing. And in their newly acquired facility in Texas, we sent some super sacks of our material, which we call Thermoform Clean Wash Flake, and they commingled it with their bottle flake at a very homogeneous mix. They solid stated the pellet after being strand pelletized, and they increased the IB to 0.80. If it's a little too technical, it means we're trying to reach a bottle grade pellet that could be sold to the Nestle, Pepsi's, Cokes of the world. Unfortunately, the conclusion was after reaching that high IV that bottles and thermoforms need to be processed as separate streams because we couldn't reach that bottle grade spec. VOCs were too high. So if you have a perfect homogeneous mix of 80-20%, you will never be able to put that those molecules of PET back into a bottle. So the most common sense is we gotta separate the streams. Can you go to the next slide, please? How to recycle the Sustainable Packaging Coalition. They did this little nice diagram. They call it, this is recyclability, where it includes applicable law, collections, rotation, reprocessing, and markets. Thanks to Driscoll's, we have an end market today. Others are joining. Others are seeing the value of closing the loop. But obviously consistency and common sense and consumer experience is a big part of getting thermoforms back into the system. Can we go to the next slide, please?
We're going to have to wrap it up because I got to go to the cover cycle.
All right.
Next.
This is just a very illustrative slide. We are members, proud members of the APR, NAPCOR, the U.S. Plastic Pact. We help Heidi in the NSAC, and we're actively out there seeing how we can collect more thermoforms to put back into the system. And I think that's it. Next slide. Policy recommendations. Definitely stop the practice of commingling thermoforms in bottles. If affecting the curbside single stream program, route need to be increased to handle the overwhelming volume. You saw my little bin. We gotta figure out how to increase or handle that extra volume. And dual stream curbside can also clean up both streams or all of the streams. EPR and drop-off locations of retail can help decrease the cost of curbside as well. My take on it, every thermoform counts. Everybody in our team thinks the same.
Okay, and we're running out of time and we've got a couple of questions and I know you've got to go. I want to thank you, Octavio, for that. So it's Commissioner Donlevy and then Commissioner Osagura have questions.
Yeah, are we going to be able to come back to Octavio after CalRecycle, or this is our opportunity?
Got to catch a flight, so I think it's better to just ask him the questions now just to make sure we've got them.
Excellent. Octavio, great presentation. It's great to have an actual reclaimer talking about what they're doing. And the thermoforms that you're talking about are PET thermoforms, or are you talking about all thermoforms? Because it's my understanding that there's not only PET thermoforms, but polypropylene, PVC, and others. The focus is just on PET?
100% focus on PET. Actually, whatever thermoforms or lookalike that come in through our system, we sort them out, we put them in a bale, and we send it to a pyrolysis facility close by.
Okay. With the PET thermoforms, are you able to get food grade resin by recycling, say a thermoform bale from a MRF, or coming from a mixed bale with bottles and thermoforms in there? Can you come up with a resin that's capable of going back into food grade products?
Yes, sir. For uses C through H.
Okay.
Or the
Does the
FDA.
FDA have any requirements for certification to certify that it is food grade standard? And
Yes.
Does your facility have that?
Yes, but both questions are, both answers are yes. It's got to start with food grade containers from the beginning. It's got to be only food grade containers. And then you got to have a process that's, evaluated by the FDA, which involves, material safety data sheets of the chemistry you're using, temperature, residence time, how you dry the material, and how you sort out the material, what kind of technology you got.
Okay. I don't know if you could name products, but could you give examples of some of the products that your thermoform sheet is able to go back into?
Driscoll's is the biggest user for our thermoform flake right now. But if you go to pastries, if you go to fruits and vegetables, you go to egg containers, and these are food grade containers, right? You can put it into other non-food grade applications without no problem at all.
Okay. And then when you have a bale coming from, I'll say a California MRF that has bottles and thermoforms, what's the quality and recovery? Are you able to recover all the material coming through that? So you'd have to separate the bottles from the thermoforms. Is there a loss in that process? And then,
so if there's very little bottles, let's say 10% bottles, we run it through the system. The problem is our system is not designed to delabel bottles. It's not designed, to float a lot of those caps and labels and capture those. So our facility is more engineered into dealing with the problems of paper label, pulp, and the gauge and the low IB of thermoforms.
okay. Last couple of questions before Commissioner Figueroa, and I know you got to go. Could you expand a little more on the EPR or the deposit program? How you think that could work, and who would pay for that if it was an EPR program or if it was in a deposit type system? Going through our redemption centers or going back to the stores. How would that work, and who would pay for it?
If you ask me, every kind of policy and every cost will absolutely, and I'm also a consumer, as all of you guys, the consumer's always going to have to pay for it one way or another. The cost will always go down to the consumer. How do we do it? And how do we give the perception to the consumer that we're actually recycling the material is the most important part of it. I think consumer engagement in the program is the most important part. If they're actually putting up the money for it, they're going to have, having that interaction, the consumer will be more happy to pay for it. And of course, the retail store, if you take a look at my pictures, a lot of those products are private label.
Okay. So without a deposit on the material, what's the incentive for the consumer to take it back to the Whole Foods or the Costco? And then a lot of the retailers have been really hesitant on the bottle bill, taking material back in the stores. So how do you get the retailers to participate?
The retail store sells Coke and Pepsi, right? So they don't want to bring in their bottles. But what about the thermoforms that they sell? This is a convenient packaging that they put products in there so that their customers are happy and loyal, and they come back the next day to buy more of their cakes, more of their pastries. How are you going to put that fresh pastries in there? How are you going to put that fresh cut fruit? So it's a different story in my point of view.
Hey,
Now,
Octavio, we're going to have to move on because we've got the CalRecycle staff here for limited time. Or how are you going to be able to join us at the end, or are you offline after this?
No, I think I got an extra time. Don't worry. I'll stay as long as I need to, or as I can.
Okay. Maybe Commissioner Segura, if you have a quick question, and then we'll get to the public comment, and then we'll turn to CalRecycle for the presentation from them.
Heidi, probably it'll take longer. If CalRecycle needs to present first, I have a couple of comments, so that take a little bit longer. So it'd probably be best for timing to get CalRecycle to start presenting, and then I'll make my comments.
Okay, thank you. And then CalRecycle, do you have some public comments?
Yes, we have one public comment from Paul Bahau, from the Global Plastics Recycling is the organization name. The comment is, Simplicity is key here. Bottle bales should only have bottles. Thermoform bales need to have their own grade, need to be their own grade. All thermoform bales should be optically sorted before hitting the market, and brand owners need to be incentivized to only make these items out of PET. PVC thermoforms aren't only non-recyclable, they contaminate all the PET. This is well within our ability to fix.
Thank you. So he's making the case that thermoforms should have their own grade and should only be of PET. Okay, thank you so much. With that, I think we are going to need to turn our attention over to CalRecycle. We're a few minutes behind in giving them the floor to give a presentation on what was going on with the QIP payments and thermoforms. So thank you, CalRecycle, for being here. Sorry for the delay.
Sure, no problem. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sure. My name is Hugh Lee. I'm the supervisor in the recycling operations branch, and we are charged, my section is charged with implementing this program. Starting, Budget Bill AB 170, which was passed late last year, authorizes CalRecycle to expend $10 million to provide quality incentive payments to certified curbside programs and certified drop-off and collection programs to increase the sorting and separation of clean loads of PET containers. So this program is essentially just incentivizing for single-stream PET containers, not for PET containers coming from buybacks. Okay, keep that in mind. Starting July 1st, 2021 and until June 30th of 2022, we will make a QIP payment to PET beverage containers for loads that contain a maximum of 2% of PET thermoform containers and other contaminants as determined by CalRecycle. The resin sorted and clean empty beverage containers must meet the commercial guideline bale recycled plastic standard as specified in the most current scrap specification circular published by ISRI. CalRecycle will pay up to $180 per ton. And that's dependent on the number of claims. So for example, if there are more claims than what we can pay at 180, we will prorate that payment down. How we do the payment is we set aside $5 million for each period. And I'll go through the period. We make the payments every 6 months, and the claim periods are July 1st, 2021 until December 31st, 2021, and they're due to CalRecycle by February 10 of 2022. So essentially, we're giving the claimant 40 days after the filing, after the end of the month, of the final month. Claims for January through June of 2022 are due to CalRecycle on August 10, 2022. Okay. Next slide, please. I have to move my slide too. So the eligibility for this program, we kind of based it off of the glass cleaning, in that before a certified entity can submit claims to CalRecycle, they must have submitted an application to us for review and approval. And then once that participant has approval, then they can start claiming. Some of the items that we're going to ask on the application itself are the source of the material purchased, the name and location where the sorting and processing take place, written description of the sampling procedures, a most recent PET bale samples, and the material characterization data so that we can review to make sure that the certified entity meets the 98% threshold. And also, we will conduct on-site bale studies at the facilities prior to application approval, just to make sure. Next slide, please.
I have a question. How long would that take to do individual bale studies while they're for 6 months of last year, they're going to turn in their data to you in February. And then when are you going to be doing bale studies, and when would they ultimately get payment?
Well, we're hoping to get the application out sometime this week. So once the application come in, we'll do the application review, and then we'll schedule at that time.
But with COVID and everything, I can see this taking quite a bit of time to get the people
It will depend on how many are going to apply, right?
Well, it depends on that and how fast you can go with the bail studies.
That is true too.
Okay. Well, okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So for claiming the QIP for the period that has already passed, right? July 1st through December 31st of last year. What we're going to do is we're going to require the claimant to submit on a claim form. We've already created a form that the claimant is going to use. And basically what they'll do is they will add up all of the redemption weights from the chip report for the pet loads and then use that to and file the claim. And each claim is for each month. So for the 6 months, it's six claims, signed dated. Questions so far? Next slide, please. So going forward, instead of using a manual claim form, we're going to start using Doris as a mechanism for claiming. And in Doris, for applying for QIP, there's a box on the shipping report that identify who did the sorting. So in the box, if you are a shipper that did the sorting, then you would put an S in the box. And if you're the processor who is doing the work, then you would put the R. And if neither if neither put anything in, then let's see, then there will be no payment.
And there'll be what?
No payment. If
No
you
payment.
didn't put it in,
So
unless you contact us later and say that you made a mistake of some sort.
Okay, we've got two questions, one from Commissioner Don Levy and then I guess a comment from the public.
Sure.
Okay, good morning, Hugh. Thank you for the information.
Sure, Jim.
So basically, each facility will be kind of on the honor system to identify whether they meet the standard or not, and then they'll have to provide some sort of documentation to get the retroactive payments.
It's more than an honor system because we will actually do the verification as well. We will actually go out to the facility and check out your equipment, make sure that it can do the work, and we will test the bales themselves.
Okay, so the standard is the A grade PET standard. I think with ISRI, I think PRCC has a standard. Secondary market has that A grade.
I believe so. Yes.
So they would have to have been shipping A grade for the last 6 months to qualify for the retro payments.
Yes.
Hi, this is Patty. Sorry to interrupt. A grade is only for buyback. It would have to be B grade, but not be with thermoforms.
Yeah, so that's kind of my point is most of the curbside is B grade, so I don't think they would qualify. I don't know of any facility processing curbside that would actually have that A grade standard. So I don't think there's any facilities that would qualify for the retroactive payments. But
There
what if a facility?
very few, Jeff, that based on our bail sort, there are just a few that do have less than 2% contamination, but they're very rare.
Okay. And then the question would be the facilities that might be closed, are they allowed to mix buyback material with curbside material to help qualify the curbside material for that additional payment? Or do they have to test the curbside material separate from the buyback material? So they can't put a lot of high quality buyback material to enrich the curbside material to make the claim.
Even if you do, you're not claiming on the total bail. You're claiming on the redemption weight on the shipping report for that PET, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So if you're mixing 100, may be 98% clean, but you're only getting paid for the 100 pounds.
Okay. But will they be eligible to make the curbside material qualify by loading it up with a lot of clean buyback material? Or do you have to test the curbside material separate from the buyback material?
I haven't thought of that yet. Let me get back to you on that.
Okay. And then after June 2022, what happens? Does the money just go back into the fund? Is that program over? And then lastly, will the facilities that qualify and receive payment, will that information be made public so people know which facilities are generating high quality or have made improvements to increase the quality?
So the first question, what happens to unexpended money, right? So this program is only for 1 year. If the money isn't expended, I assume I would assume it probably just sits there. Unless, Amy, do you know? Would you know?
Thank you. You are correct, Jeff. If the money's not expended, then it just, we don't withdraw it from the fund if the money's not expended. So it does go back into the beverage container recycling fund. And it does, in fact, sunset on June 30th of 2022 unless it gets extended by the legislature.
Okay.
Okay. And in regards to your second question, we can provide the names of those facilities, but we can't provide the number, right? The actual volume that they claimed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be good because there's probably a handful of curbside facilities that I think are doing a good job that may qualify. And I think getting them high quality recognition would be a good incentive. Hopefully get other facilities to follow along with what they're doing as far as best practices to generate high quality material.
Well, and just for us giving advice on policy, it would be good to know how many of the facilities can meet these standards versus not. And yeah, excellent point. I know Commissioner Osagura, did you want to enter into this now or and go back to your original comments? I'm sorry, I skipped you. I should probably let you go first before I go back to this item. Did you want to say anything now? Commissioner Segura?
I was trying to unmute. I don't know why my computer's having a bit of problems today. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Can you hear me, Heidi?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh. I guess I just wanted to make a comment. I wanted to make a comment about a couple maybe potential misconceptions out there. The current curbside collection system in the state of California, for the majority of constituents in the state, allows for 64 gallons of commingled recycling in those containers. Plus, most programs have an additional container those same consumers can utilize. Stacking up, thermoforms. If you stack up cardboard boxes, yes, you could. You'd never have enough space. I mean, so most companies in California, not all of them, provide consumers with instructions of breaking down boxes, crushing aluminum cans, crushing down, PET bottles, making sure you do that to go into containers so they have enough volume. The additional thing is most vehicles that pick up these materials are compaction and can carry those. So I just want to make sure that there is not a misconception that consumers in California do not have enough volume for curbside collection. So that's one. The second one is a supply and demand comment that we seem not to address or that we need to address. The comments made is that there is significant demand for these materials and that there's supply out there that only needs to be separated for that to meet, the demand. What is not addressed is the folks that need these materials, what are they willing to pay to get to the supply, right? If the payment, and CalRecycle here shows $180 in terms of an incentive payment, right? But it doesn't say what is the difference here. the person from PAT, the person from that managed PET for a significant amount of the years and made a comment says, you know, while there's an allowance of thermoform for PET bales, the preference is to have pure PET, right? But it is allowed, it's used, it's recycled. And so I want to make sure that, you know, when folks are presenting that, you know, I would like to hear more about, so how are you addressing the supply and demand, you know, issue that we're having? Because the comment was consumers need to pay. Well, consumers across California are paying for a lot of things and are very frustrated. You know, we have new laws coming into place currently, whether it's SB 1383, whether it's electrification, that are significant, causing rises in prices for consumers. And so here's a voice saying, hey, let's just add more to the consumer. So, you know, I just want to make sure, once again, I wanted to clarify any potential misconceptions in terms of collection, curbside collection, and the collection system in California, and also really get to what's the supply, demand, you know, question mark, who's going to pay, or how's it going to be funded, or are people willing to pay the price to get to clean thermoform? So that would be my comments, Chair.
Thank you. And actually, you raised an issue that I was wondering, because he had stacked up those PET containers, the thermoforms, and they do take a lot of space, and they're all oddly shaped, and they're rigid, which is why the manufacturers use them, because they protect the product, but that makes them harder to crush and put in your bin. So you're saying that you think that they can still all fit in there if people just step on them and break them up or something?
Yes, I mean that's what would happen if into their container. It would be compact. So yes.
Okay.
I mean it's a you know, it's most programs across California, most systems, you know, consumers are encouraged to break down your.
Yeah, and you were breaking up just a little bit, but I think I got it. The supply and demand question to me is a good point too, because it's not just, you know, who's ultimately going to pay. The consumer does ultimately pay, but when they pay at end of life and they see no value in the product anymore, they get quite irritated, especially if it's socialized costs through the waste system where everybody's paying for everybody else's stuff at the same, you know, whether they bought it or not, versus when you buy it, it's a one-to-one. You're paying for that product and the whole life cycle of that product, which is why I tend to be a fan of producer responsibility type programs. Plus it sends a signal to the producers that you're going to have to help us figure out the back end of the system if you're going to put it on the market. Okay, well, thank you very much. That was very helpful. And then we've got to get back to CalRecycle. I know they've got limited time, so I want to let Huey go through this and finish it, and then we'll take commissioners' comments and then public comments, please.
Okay. Next slide, please. It's the last slide, and it's just an informational slide. It's we're going to try and get the bulletin out, as well as the application and the form, the claim form, hopefully published sometime this week. And there's the contact information for if you have any questions about the program or how to claim, that sort of thing. So there's the phone number and the email address. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and go next to Commissioner Davis and then to the public comment.
Thanks. You answered some of the questions I had on particularly your verification process and the facilities that are going to claim the value. I did have a question about the 10 million. You said it might go down depending on the claims. From what I'm hearing, it may be more than sufficient. Might the payment go up to utilize the 10 million, or does it only have a downward spiral?
The $180 is written in regulation.
Okay.
So
in regulation or in your?
It's in we have regulations for classic QIP. Okay.
And yeah, I need to go look at that. I didn't realize that you had.
Yeah, this classic QIP and aluminum has been around since 2007.
Okay, so this is based on existing.
It's been around, but we stopped making payments, or the fund wasn't available after 2010, after the 2009 year where everything went crazy.
Yeah.
So we just, Glass QIP is the only one that has survived since then.
Were the others linked to the individual commingled rate studies?
No. The ICRS has nothing to do with QIP.
Separate issue. Okay.
Yeah.
But might a return to the individual commingled rate studies at least do some, in some way reward the MRFs that have a higher concentration of PET since they're removing thermoforms. They're still selling bales, but those bales don't have the thermoform content in them. Is returning, at least on a limited basis, to individual commingled rate, is that an option going forward absent an additional appropriation?
That is an issue that will be for another meeting, I think. It's on our radar.
Yeah, it's part of the draft recommendation that the commission was considering. So the other one would be to kind of continue along the lines of what you're doing, at least have but I think the policy terms a bottle bale rate, a rate that achieves cleaner bottle bales by removing thermoforms, so that those bales can more effectively go into bottle-to-bottle recycling. And I know we're jumping between PET bales and thermoform bales, but it seems like the two are definitely mixed.
Okay, so Emily, maybe we could read the public comments.
Yes, we actually have 3. So the first one is from Mike Centers from Titus MRF Services. Please do not pay for past periods. Claims need to be for 2022 and beyond in order to ensure you can audit those who submit claims. I wholly support it is operated just like the glass quality incentive payments. The next comment is...
Before we move on, I just want to confirm that the law is requiring, I believe, correct, Huey, so that's not something we can change, Mike. That's already in the bill, which is why it's very important we all watch the legislation. It's very hard to change. Okay, thanks. And next question.
Yeah, next one is from Veronica Pardo from Resource Recovery Coalition of California. It says, when will we be able to submit for the new plastic QIP?
So you said that you're coming up with a form and that it has to be submitted by February 10th, I believe. Is that
Correct.
what you said?
Yes, the claim forms, yes. But before that, you have to submit an application for us to review. So we're hoping it's going to come out this week. Today, tomorrow.
It will.
It will. Okay.
So then as soon as they get it, they can apply.
They can apply. They can start the application, the application process, and we'll submit it and we'll come out.
Is there a notification somewhere or people can check to get this as quickly as possible?
What we'll do is we'll do a listserv after we publish it. So.
Okay. And for everybody on their public webpage, they've got a whole list of listservs you can sign up for, and there will be one for justice payment, correct?
Yes.
They can just sign up. Very good. Okay. So then everybody, or you can call this number, send an email. And Commissioner Donlevy, I believe you're okay because you withdrew your comment. So I think we're good, unless there are any other public comments.
Yeah, we have 2 more public.
Okay.
So another one from Mike Centers from Titus MRF Services. If a curbside number holder is claiming for B grade PET as B grade PET without thermoforms is, in my opinion, fraudulent claims. There is no such thing as B grade PET that does not have significant contamination to include thermometers. Titus has tested these bales. If a processor is mixing buyback with curbside, why? What value does that provide? Those who do this are attempting to meet grade A bales. If they do make grade A bales by mixing buyback, then it should not qualify for the QIP given it is for curbside or collection programs only. Also, this is for collection programs to be consistent with the glass quality incentive payment. I disagree that you have one facility that has generated a high quality bale that has met QIP level of quality, but this incentive is very important for the industry to have a reason to improve.
Do you want to respond to that?
Well, no, not right now. I don't think I have enough knowledge to respond.
Okay. So if I understand him correctly, he's just basically saying we can't have one facility mixing these bales or else we're going to have what he considers a fraud situation. So, and I believe he's right in that the law is saying it was for curbside. Is that correct, Commissioner Davis?
It's for single stream material. Right. Yes.
So then allowing it to be mixed with buyback, isn't that counter to the bill? I guess that's the question he's posing.
That's the question. Let me consult with our legal department.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you. Any other comments? Public comments?
One more public comment from Kate Eagles from the Association of Plastic Recyclers. It says, what is QIP supposed to incentivize with respect to more MRFs pulling out and marketing PET thermoform separately from their PET bottles, then selling to reclaimers such as Octavio? Not clear to me.
Does anybody want to speak to that, or just we'll take it under consideration?
I think that's a great question, Heidi. I mean, that is the question, right? I mean, we have one group of folks, the PET folks, saying, hey, there's allowances, although there's a preference, it's not that it's not allowed. It's just there's a preference for one manufacturing versus the other. And this person then, makes this comment, asks the question, then why would you redo this whole system or try to? I mean, there is, I think, policy for us to look at, in terms of what Commissioner Davis has worked to develop and to incorporate some of these thoughts. But I think these are definitely things that we have to answer. It seems we're chasing, what we can't do as a commission, and this is my personal perspective, is someone is asking us to get a clean material stream because it benefits them economically versus it helps what we're intending to do, which is include, sustainable actions throughout the state of California, sustainability and recyclability for everyone. So that would be my
I think there is Commissioner Segarra, there is another issue that impinges here, and that's the minimum content requirements for PET bottles that is effective as of last Saturday. And I'm hearing, and maybe we'll hear later in presentations, I'm hearing the PET bottle reclaimers do not want the thermoforms in those bales. They can't use them, as we heard earlier. I've heard that repeatedly. So I think that's another issue, that how are we going to supply clean bales to bottle manufacturing when we're also selling PET bales for carpet or auto parts or other things. So there is that supply and demand balance that it needs to be on the table as well.
Well, and I think, so thank you very much. That was very helpful. And I did want to highlight too, I don't think this committee hasn't discussed it yet, but the commission, we refer all the time to the waste hierarchy of source reduction first. And as I've said, I think we've all seen in the grocery stores an absolute proliferation of these PET clamshells. And, but we haven't talked about how to source reduce them either. And I do want to raise this issue, and it's probably for a later discussion, but I'm getting more and more reports shared with me that there's a lot of concern about recycled plastics having very high contamination rates of chemicals that they don't want in your food. In fact, some countries have actually started to ban recycled content on food grade plastic. So that's something else that I think probably should be discussed too at some point. But this, I think we need to turn back. Thank you, Cal Recycle. Very, very helpful presentation, and hopefully it's helpful to the people watching as well on how they can apply and stay informed on what's happening with your new program. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so we'll move back to agenda item 4 and our presentations. So we had finished with Octavio. Vital was the first presenter from Green PET. Our second presenter today is Ed Dominion with D6. Ed, are you on? Uh-oh, do we not have him? Maybe we've missed him. Okay, so we'll go ahead and skip Ed at this point unless he can join us quickly.
Yeah, no, I was having a little internet issue there, so I am absolutely here. Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. Do you want us to show your slides or do you want to show them?
I'm pretty sure I can handle, actually, do me a favor. I'm having a little issue with the Google. If you
No
could
problem at all.
go to me and just share it and I'll talk you through it and I'll run through this quick so we got enough time.
Okay, Emily, could you pull up his presentation? Is that okay?
Yes, 1 second.
Thank you very much. And then just say next whenever you're ready. And welcome. Thank you so much for coming. So
yeah, not a problem. Thank you for having me. So very passionate about recycling, and I'm probably one of the only few thermoformers that would actually hop on this call because I'm literally building my company towards becoming the first carbon negative packaging company in the world. We'll jump on to slide number 2 here. So just real 30,000 foot D6 started in 2014. We've ultimately helped private brands and other packaging companies that require PET, clear PET, to head towards a sustainable product off of U.S. domestic waste. We are by far one of the largest bottle buyers currently through our partners in California that go from bottles to containers, and also working with Green Impact to go from tray to tray. In-house design, we do everything privately here domestically, largest industrial 3D printer in the world, and we're converting for about 15 to 16% of consumer use globally per year. The biggest bullet point to look at is the vertical integration around the TCWF system in Sherman, Texas. And we'll get into this a little bit later into the deck. But it's very important to understand the technology around chemical recycling, around the physical recycling of the mechanical process, and also the decon units that are needed to bring these plastics to food grade, because one of the folks commented, you are seeing chemical transfers, and we're going to talk about that a little bit and why it's so important to have the proper decon units to make it truly FDA grade food plastics. Next one. Where we're at on our, our environmental, social, and government overviews, we design, we prototype, then we manufacture in our facilities or one of our OEMs here in North America. We have an LSP NGRP reactor coming online in Sherman, Texas that will be able to process and convert about 22 to 36 million pounds per year of roll stock. Now, our primary use in in-feed will be thermoform content. We can also use bottles, but our real goal is to use thermoform content and bales. So it's very critical to get them sorted, to not have bales like Octavio talked about, to just be primarily thermoforms. We will then take that sheet, convert it into giant roll stock, feed it into our systems, and produce private branded products for very, very large retailers, ag companies, things of this nature, to hit their ESG initiatives. Our goal is to be at 100% by 2025. And we're constantly adding the proper technology to convert this waste into usable FDA PET products. Polypropylene, I keep hearing about this in the market that nobody wants to touch it, nobody wants to recycle it. We're actually looking to take the polypropylene and spin it into N95 material. Very important for medical grade use, and we'll spend a little bit of time on that. The byproduct of the bottle caps of what could be turned into a higher volume better product for reshoring medical goods here in America. Next slide. This is our current network. We are very familiar with Ridwell. We're using them up in the Northwest, can talk a little bit about them. With our facilities and partner in Vernon, California is our Planet Earth. We're using a tremendous amount of sheet that's going from bottle stock. And then Octavio is helping feed some materials to our Sherman facility, but you can see a very wide network, constant distribution, primarily in private branded ag bakery products, things of this nature, things you have in your house that we want to take to 100% thermoform content by 2025. Next slide, please. Conversion sites, as you can see, California and Texas, these will be our primary feeds, and then they'll will be increasing to the East Coast by 2025, 2026 to be able to process more plastic waste. Next slide, please. How the system works, I know you're all familiar with it, but I just want to show you how we're using materials from Green Impact and our Planet Earth. Right now, starting with a little delivery truck friend market, we thermoform, we ship it to a co-packer, goes to the consumer, hits the trash can, goes to collection, hits the MRF, sortation, bottle, thermoform, or mixed bale. Right now, thermoforms are going to Green Impact to be washed, cleaned, to be put in a flake form. Our other partner is our Planet Earth. They're doing everything internally and turning it into sheet. Those feedstocks are then going into our thermoforming process of how we currently have it. We'll be buying and looking to convert our own facility to become vertically integrated to take more thermoform content, wash, clean, and recycle into 2023 that we'll be setting up in North America. So feedstock for us is going to be very, very important, and we hope to be a top 2, top 3 buyer of thermoform bales coming up in the next 18 months to 20 months. Next slide, please. What's very important is the technology, okay? We hear a lot of people, 25%, 30% of recycled content. The thing that you have to do when you're thermoforming is boost the IV. Octavio talked a little bit about this. If you don't boost the IV, it becomes very fragile. That's why thermoforms can't go back into bottles. It's because they can't take the weight, the compression, and the carbonation. So we have what is known as a P reactor. The P reactor takes the materials, the flake or pellet, and we feed it through the extrusion point, that large point, 2 through 5, and then we feed it into a decon unit. And this is in a liquid state, so we're scrubbing the carbon chain and pulling contaminants out. It then falls down, and then we'll feed into a roll stock in step 9 through 14. Now, these machines are not readily available. That's why a lot of my competitors and certain folks aren't talking about going above 25%. It's because they don't have the technology currently to do it. So it's very important, to separate what can be done in a proper manner and then what tech is needed to amplify to go to 50, 100% thermoform content. Because if you don't have the decon units, seen it like our Planet Earth and Global and at D6, you can't hit a certain level because you'll have product break, or you could have migration of chemical, which is a very important note. Next slide, please. What we're asking for, laws, policies, it's very important that we understand, clear PET, mono-based material, not mixed. So what that pretty much means is on PET, we just need clear PET with what is known as no EVOH cap, no film on it. If we can get to a monolayer material, and it's very important to note this, around PET and polypropylene, we can recycle more. It's very important because in polypropylene, they do talc fill, they do mineral fills, they sandwich it. They put a virgin material, virgin material on the bottom, and then they fill it. So when you recycle or reuse it, you can't do it because each combination is different. So polypropylene could be recyclable. It just takes some really big initiatives and changes that is out of my pay grade, but I just want to air that out for everybody. It can be done. One thing we propose is step 2. This is above my pay grade as well with all the parties that are on here. If there was an option for a bin just for PET, one problem that we have in the PET markets and bottles is metal. Cans are getting through. So when we're grinding PET and putting it through, sometimes the metal gets into the sheet. Don't know if this is achievable or not, just want to throw it out there. But if PET could have its own bin, because it is cumbersome, it does take up a considerable amount of space, but it's very valuable and we can use it. We don't have any of our partners globally asking for more virgin material. How can I get more thermoform content? How can I get more thermoform content? How can I get more thermoform content? We're domestically, very important to note that too, domestically.
Can I ask a question, Ed? Where is that metal? So you're saying the cans, it's not from any other source, it's cans that are?
Cans primarily, cans.
Huh.
So
I thought Magnets, we're getting those.
It does sometimes. The problem is it just, I'm going to just tell you, it gets through. So if we could separate cans with fiber, it's huge because sometimes fiber gets through the strands and the filtration as well. So if PET had a separate bin, my projections of just basic consumer use and everything, it's over a $4 to $9 billion market just in California alone within waste, if we're captured at the level of what consumers are. Very big, but it would take time to get there and money, right? Your plastic mandates of what's going into bottles is huge. It's driving use. It's driving use of waste, which is really important. The problem is it's also chewing up feedstock that thermoformers have used for decades now and in other markets. So we've seen a clear spike, but being able to get separated bales, with thermoforms would be huge for the thermoforming community to be able to regulate some of the pricing, because we've had some pretty big swings that are taking us higher than virgin materials right now. So you get this brand of which do I go with, which do I not go with, or what blend is it this month to that next month. Step number 4.
Sorry, if you could hang on just a second. I think Commissioner Donlevy has a comment. No, you're good? Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Number 4, I hear polypropylene all the time, giving them some extended time to be able to get into this, to go to monomaterial in black. Polyprop would be huge. It's a very big market. It could be used for medical uses. It could be used for a lot of other things that could happen within gown changes, things of this nature. It's just nobody's really talked about it and or validated it, but it could be used for massive, massive medical use and other tech through injection molding if we could get to mono-based material. But like I said, above my pay grade, anybody would like to talk about this, my contact information will be on the bottom, but our goal is to use all products rather than just divert it to chemical recycling when we're washing and cleaning. One other thing that we're doing is number 5, and somebody brought this up, and this is a really, really, really big point for consumers, for fiber and pulp. There's what is known as PFSAs, okay? PFSAs are called forever chemicals. They never leave your body. They never leave the water streams. And any fiber material on this planet that rejects water or oil has a PFSA in it.
Well, it's actually, I think, isn't it PFAS?
Oh, PFAS, sorry. Sorry, so many acronyms. You have to forgive me.
No worries.
But you know what I'm talking about. And this is one of the things that as we compost and these things get back into waterways, they get it back into soil, we're putting it in different places. So, and that's when things that can leak through if you don't have proper decontamination within PET, some could leach, things could happen. So, just asking, or a true FDA grade PFAS would be ideal. But that's one thing that's hindering a little bit within the recycling and composting. And then also just validation around composting. We realize PET is not the only source. It's not the only way to go. We use recycled aluminum. We use a lot of recycled content across the board, but just really having a standard, because I hear so much greenwashing that happens in the market from my competitors, and these things are coming offshore, and are they compostable? Are they not? What label do they have? Just a real standard around that is very, very important, and having a governing body around it, because so many folks offshore are not held to the same standards. And it's really sad to see, because there's items that are coming in through the ports of Long Beach and California that are not in compliance. But that's a different conversation. So that's all I had right now, and I'll throw it open to the group.
Thank you so much. And I'm fascinated with this mono-based materials checklist here.
It's
also
huge.
And then, and so Commissioner Davis, on that policy, when we get to that, I'd be interested in bringing these things up. And then the PFAS we've already addressed and banned if it's defined as recyclable or compostable. The commission has already said they should not contain PFAS. And I can tell you that the U.S. Plastics Pact is a massive debate right now on getting on the elimination list. I've said repeatedly, this is the DDT of our generation, and we've got to get it out as quickly as possible. They just identified an entire river in Maine that's completely polluted. So, and it's coming from many, many different sources. So the faster we stop it, the faster we can start seeing them go down, even though they're forever chemicals. Commissioner Donlevy, I think, and then Commissioner Usagura. Or, I'm sorry, Commissioner Davis, and then Donlevy. And then
if you don't mind. Real quick you showed Riverside on the map, but you didn't discuss it. What is that, the PT bottle?
Vernon, California is our Planet Earth. We're a buyer from them. Yeah, you can go back to this slide.
No, the one above it. One more
up. Yeah, so we have a conversion partner in Riverside, and we also have another facility in Fontana. So we have 3 in California, one's just a distribution. Okay. But we're converting in California right now. Probably about 18% of our business is manufactured in the state of California.
I want to switch location. Riverside's east of Vernon, but that's all right. Yeah. It's my territory. But actually, my question, you made a comment, and I appreciate the discussion about how you're relying on PET bottles now as a source for the thermoform demand, and yet there's also an increased PET bottle demand. But you talked about the virgin pricing, and I think some of the commission discussion, and actually one of our policies, was to try to decouple that pricing so that the recycled content doesn't always depend on the price of oil, for example. Could you elaborate on that? Why shouldn't recycled demand drive pricing decoupled from virgin pricing?
Yeah, I'll handle this to the best of my ability, and what I've seen in my years since being in plastics in 2007 is primarily around the tech to convert that waste. It's usually put at a premium. Right. This is why D6 is vertically integrating to help decouple that cost of going through third party. But we've always seen that good, bad, or indifferent. There's been premiums, especially going into this year and into Q3 and 2 of last year with the rise of COVID and not being able to get things through port. That our PET is we used to be able to buy bales at 12 cents. And now they're over 43 in some instance, 46. So that is a massive jump compared to an 80% increase in virgin. So, ISH and a couple of the others that track these things is you've seen an exponential increase in our PET because we're fighting for it. We're fighting to keep large amounts, if not 100% in recycled content. And some of these swings have just never been seen before, right? So some of that has to do with the bottling companies having to put 25% and then grow. And they still have the demand in the thermoforming market. So that would be really nice to do a study or governing body to be able to get more recycled content in the system on a national bill or statewide bills to be able to create more supply that would help regulate that cost and get it more in line. Because
so in your sense is that the recycled content doesn't necessarily drive the pricing, if the supply can keep up with the content, whether it's voluntary content or legislative content requirement.
Yeah, it's a very complicated question, especially with COVID and the ports and not being able to get certain things through. But it's definitely been held at a premium as of late since COVID and the issues at ports. But like I said, we have all of our customers are asking for more domestic converted waste, undeniably.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Donlevy and then Osagura.
Yes, thank you. Agreeing with Chair Sanborn, the suggestion for the mono-based materials, definitely helps without question. With the thermoforms that you guys are producing at your facilities, are you able to take non-food grade thermoforms and turn them into food grade thermoforms, or do you have to separate them? Because I'm kind of curious with cross-contamination, the migration of chemicals from non-food grade into food grade, are you able to separate those out? And then do you have an FDA certification that shows that you've gone through the proper testing to ensure that the food grade that you're producing has actually separated all that other material that's possibly out there?
Yes. So good question. So the letter of non-objective is what we have on our equipment to be able to take a food grade thermoform and convert it through. So we're not looking to take, industrial process or products like that because there is so much demand. Our goal is to go from tray to tray. There is some additional equipment that can take the industrial products that you're talking about. That's traditionally done more through chemical recycling because they can blend it. But our goal is to use tray to tray. So we have the letter of non-objectives from the FDA and from legal groups on our equipment to be able to go, from a food grade thermoform part to another food grade sheet. I can't answer that for the rest of the industry. There's some other chemical recyclers that are going out there. And the items that don't pass that test, go primarily into that other avenue for industrial applications for injection molding and or for non-food grade use. But we can take food grade trays and convert it back, and we can show you the paperwork. And if anybody would like to come see the facility, the team would be more than welcome to come and visit it.
Okay. Then with everybody looking for more supply, everybody's going after the rPET. The A-grade bottles, I think you had mentioned it, Commissioner Davis mentioned it, the price is very high these days, which is fantastic for people that have that good supply. But thermoforms, I think everybody agrees, should be separated from the bottle bales. That thermoform price is still very low, so it doesn't provide an incentive for facilities to actually do the separation. So what's it going to take to give that incentive to the facilities to do that separation of the bottles from the thermoforms?
There definitely needs to be a collaboration because Octavio pointed on this a little bit, especially around private brand work and things of this nature. There's a need to make sure those things are diverted from landfill. So I'm sure that there's going to be some added premium on it, or if there's any initiative to help extend the life of landfills. We're working within a couple states where they're actually physically running out of landfill space. They can't build them fast enough. So extending life, there has to be some useful use to be taken into accommodation around that at cost to the consumer. But I will say this much, I'm sure the pricing will go up from here, but it would be really nice to set some floors and ceilings as this is a program to help within society to convert a product so it's not burned or buried, right? And get to that point where we can start closing a loop. So, not saying you get to a law of diminishing returns if the price goes too high, correct? And if there's not a proper correlation or between that and virgin materials, because that's where brands are put into a predicament. Which do I use? So, a peg ratio, something like that could move would be absolutely invited because it would help regulate pricing as well, which would be very, very important for the cause. That would be very, very important. If not, that is not able to be achieved. We have brands that are making massive global commitments. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation, she's leading companies and groups that are absolutely pushing the cause. So it's happening. It's just, how do the states monetize is the biggest question because there are homes for these things. We just have to push to get the tech into North America to help to convert all these to food grade.
Which costs money.
So you indicated demand for thermoforms is up. Is there enough supply in California to supply the thermoform reclaimers? I mean, is there any plans for expansion into California if we could solve this solution? Or do you have facilities going up elsewhere because there's a better supply of thermoforms or clamshells than California?
This will
Yes,
be the last question, and we'll move on to commissioners.
Yes, we're putting a very large infrastructure into the state of Texas, and there are some very big demands that are coming through where recapturing is coming through not only at potentially retail level but also at state level. You know, I've heard only, 16 to 15 of the MRFs in all of California are collecting thermoforms right now on one of our last calls with Cal Recycling. So we hope to, become a very large buyer in the future. But the demand is we need more converters like Green Impact. We need more thermoformers to vertically integrate to help out. We need to be able to support Our Planet's Earth to be able to lead this charge between bottle and thermoform. So you're going to see the rise of it. It's happening. It just hasn't hit to the scale. So you are seeing a little bit of we need all the MRFs to be able to participate and make it worth their while in California. And you will see increased use because, like I said, that's just thermoforms that need that. You can also repurpose that into injection molded products, right? We're not the only ones that can convert these things. And chemical recyclers are going to be using more and more of it. So it's kind of like a, three-headed horse of how we need to approach it between, chemical recycling, mechanical recycling, and then other. How can it be repurposed into other? Is that, burned power?
I still have a lot of questions about chemical recycling, what exactly that means, and how much cost there's going to be with that, and the emissions. I still have tons of questions around that.
Yeah,
I don't think
that's a big one, but just know mechanical recycling can return to a clear state. Chemical recycling can't be clear, so it can't go back to food. So, really distinguishing between those two processes is important. Any other questions? Contact is on the last slide. Let me know how I can help.
Thank you very much. We're going to have to move on. Commissioner Osagura had a question, and then we'll public comment, and then we'll move on to Patty Moore.
No, just I think it's great that the commission has been working on the truth in labeling, recommendations. I mean, I know the legislation regarding it as well has gone through. Extremely important. It gets highlighted in almost every conversation that we have. It's also important. I know that folks would like to have every material separated by individual carts at the curbside, which, by the way, most consumers in the state of California love their curbside program. But I just want to remind everyone, there is an MSW trash container at the curbside. There's a green waste one for organics, including food. There's a blue one for commingled recycling, and there's a brown potential one for food waste. So, and all that has cost implications of vehicles and containers. And so I just want to make sure that everyone understands when folks say, well, just add another, what that means, right? Split the cart, have a split truck. I mean, all those things have things that cost money. And I think one thing that I really like the presenter said at the end, said worth their while. I want to change maybe that a little bit to, to fund a program to do what's needed cannot be done by taking from other pockets to put them in one pocket, right? If we change from one pocket to the other, the system still has the same amount of money. And so to take care of the system, if this is something that we want to recommend and do, then there has to be funding for that. And funding that is separate and that is not, once again, changing monies from one side of one pocket to the other. So just wanted to make sure that I make that statement. Thank you.
Very good. And public comment?
Yes, hi. We have a public comment from Ron Milo from the City of LA Public Works. Greetings. I have a question concerning a thermoform plastic container is made of plastic number 6. PS material, which is formulated.
Pretty loud background noise there. Do you have a headset or something?
Yeah, 1 second.
Thank you. Everybody's trying to work at home. Multiple people are working at home. Kids are studying. It's pretty hard to get quiet.
While Emily gets her headset, this is Laura. I can just read it.
Sure.
For ease. So it's again from Ron Milo from the City of LA Public Works. It says, greetings. I have a question concerning a thermoformed plastic container is made of plastic number 6, PS material, which is formulated for thermoforming process. Referencing from the definition of thermoformed plastic container are formed from an extruded resin. This extruded resin material includes but not limited to PETE number 1, HDPE number 2, PP number 5, and PS number 6. Although from AB 478, Section 1 finds and declares that for the past 2 decades, PETE thermoformed clamshells packaging has contained the most California recycled content of any food packaging in the U.S. This is good news. My question is, what will happen to the thermoformed plastic container made of extruded polystyrene number 6 resin material as far as AB 478 is concerned? As we all know, polystyrene has no market value at this time. Any information is greatly appreciated. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Do any of the commissioners want to speak to that? I mean, we've already, as a commission, said that the only materials we think are hitting our definition of what's recyclable is 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think we're going to, the QIP payment system that's going into place, I think will help shed some light on what it takes to get PET thermoforms out of the bales and see if who qualifies, if anybody, and how they're doing it, and then we can learn from that. I'm familiar with the system that the system I'm most familiar with uses optical sorting with a quality control system. So the number 6 thermoform is not going to get in to that stream. It's kicking out PET and then separating the thermoforms from the bottles. So, but I think once we know who, if anybody, can meet the standard on the QIP, then we can begin to see what are the best practices to do that, and maybe look to how that rolls over to industry support for those practices to get the material that they want. So.
Well, Commissioner Davis, didn't we already put recommendations in place regarding the colorants? And for example, PET, we suggested that they ban green PET because it contaminates the stream. Is there, I don't think this commission has taken up whether we should ban any sort of non-PET, clear PET thermoform, but that might help keep the rest of the stream clean, right?
Yeah, and I, yeah, that it's a bigger issue, right?
No, I know. But I'm thinking policy-wise, what our options are to discuss. Okay, we're going to have to keep moving. We've got less than an hour to finish our presentations. So I'm going to turn it over now to Patty Moore. So Patty, are you here?
I am.
Thank you. Welcome. And do you want to have the CalRecycle staff show your slides, or would you like to do it?
I'll show my slides, please.
Okay. You could let Patty. There you go. You're the presenter.
Okay.
Thank you. 10 minutes is all we'll have. Thank you. And then Q&A.
Can you see my slides?
Not yet. CalRecycle, why don't you pull it up in case we have technical trouble?
It said, and let me just go back to go to meeting. What the heck? Sorry.
It's okay. It's the world we're living in now.
Yeah. Okay, just take me a sec.
It's the button at the bottom that says screen. You want to hit that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to give it permission. Just give me a sec. It'll just be more clear, which is why I want to do this.
Okay. We just don't have a lot of time is the issue.
I know. I thought NAPCOR.
Uh-oh, now I'm not getting a clear signal from you either. I'm a little worried that you showing it is going to impact your ability to have a good signal. CalRecycle, can you go ahead and pull it up, and then hopefully Patty can just say next. Because we don't have a lot of time. There we go. Okay. So we're not hearing you now, Patty.
Here we go.
There we are.
All right. How do I play it?
I think it's under view. Yeah, view is right to the left. If you like 4 over to the left where your cursor is.
There. No, that's not it. There. No, That's not it?
Yeah. Power cycle, why don't you go ahead and pull it up? We're going to have to get going. I'm sorry.
Okay, there we go. Can you see it now?
No. There we are.
All right. Well, it's not going to
We'll just
really
go
work
with
too well, but I'll just do the best I can here.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's posted on the
So,
Google.
yeah. So here's PRCC has been doing bail sorts of PET for, well, a long time. And last year we specifically did one to look at thermoforms in PET bales. We followed, and as a result of that, we created a new category of bales, which is we now have PET A grade, which is buyback material, PET B grade, which is curbside without thermoforms, PET B grade with thermoforms, and thermoforms. So we have 4 bale categories, all are available on our website. So we wanted to follow up on that just to see if anything had changed. And you can see the results of this the survey here. You can see that grade A is 95% CRV PET, grade B is 65% PET, CRV PET, and B with thermoforms is only 41% CRV PET. So what we're seeing is that that the folks who are doing B with thermoforms are being overpaid the commingle rate, and I'll talk more about that later. Another very important finding is down there in clear light blue. California has decided that we now have mandated recycled content for PET bottles, which means we need to go bottle to bottle. To go bottle to bottle, you need the clear light blue bottles. You can see that grade A is 92% clear light blue. Grade B is 76, and B with thermoforms is only 58% clear light blue. So those bales are not suitable to go bottle to bottle. They're just too little of the desired material.
Can I ask a quick question, Patty?
Sure.
This is your organization's bale studies and standards of the grade A, B, and B with thermoforms, or who set these gradings?
This is actual data from bale sorts.
So just factually, this is what you're finding?
That is correct.
And that's how you organized it, was grade A, B, and B with thermoforms?
Well, we have further organization I'll show you in a minute here. But this is just the
these
high
numbers
level.
are kind of shocking to me, how
They are shocking. And what we found is you'll see it's consistent. It's been consistent. So we'll continue to, let me continue to keep going. So you were asking about categories. We actually sorted into, we actually did 6 types of bales, 6 different categories of bales so that we could understand what was going on in California. We did grade B with auto sort, and this is from MRFs that optically separate it and then manually remove it afterwards. We did grade B with robotics that remove the PET thermoforms afterwards, so it's optically sorted and then robotically removing the thermoforms after. We did B with no optical, so those are just positive sort by hand. Those are usually small MRFs that do that. We did grade B with thermoform.
I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
I think you're talking about the next slide, but we're seeing the prior one.
Oh, you didn't, did it go?
Yeah,
now.
Categories. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a delay. Sorry. So that was grade, number 3 was grade B, hand sorted. We also did grade B with thermoforms that was not optically sorted. Those were hand sorted. So the MRF instructs their people to pull all PET, whether it's bottle or a thermoform. And then we did grade B with thermoforms that are optically separated, and then the MRFs just sell that material with the thermoforms with the bottles. And then we looked at grade A bales from buyback centers. We did, I think, around 18 different bales, different locations, north and south. And here is some of what we found. For the grade B with manual, we found that the data is very consistent between 20 and 21, as you can see. Quality seems to have declined slightly, but overall it's pretty consistent. So that gives us, we're glad about that because that means that what we're doing is accurate. People had asked about pricing. This is PRCC's bale prices for 2021. You can see that grade A has gone up dramatically.
Your slide, I don't see this.
Let's see. Okay. Grade A has gone up dramatically, as you can see, and as has to a lesser extent B and B with thermoforms. PT with just thermoform PT has remained fairly flat through the year. I think this is an issue of supply, and it also, the fact that people haven't been able to get the supply they want, so they kind of have dropped out. Some people have dropped out of the market. We haven't had trouble moving any of the material that we've handled. We sell to Octavio and to other people as well.
So when you say dropped out of the market, you mean they're returning back to virgin material?
No, I mean reclaimers that are deciding they don't want to be in the PET thermoform, that are concentrating on bottles rather than worrying about thermoforms at this point. PRCC PRCC has contracts with the reclaimers in California. Our goal is to sell to reclaimers in California first and make sure they get all the volume that they need. PRCC handles over half of the volume, maybe more like 60% of the volume of PET that's generated in California, and we sell first to California buyers. Most of the California reclaimers, with a couple exceptions, are concentrating on PET bottles. This has been exacerbated because of the content legislation.
Commissioner Ostergaard had a question.
Yeah, just I guess I would just like to understand it better, purely in economics terms, right? I mean, if we've been told by a number of presenters that there's significant demand for PET thermoform, which would mean that orange line should be actually going towards the blue line, right? The PTA. That orange line is dropping. I don't know what it means. I mean, obviously I would have to look at the data. That's just something that needs additional probably review by us. Why is that dropping? It shouldn't. If there is that significant demand, the pricing should be increasing, not decreasing.
Well, it's, as I said, it's two things. PRCC, this is PRCC's bale price, not necessarily a national or international bale price. And PRCC sells to California reclaimers first. And as I noted, the volume that the volume of separated material has been so low that people who that the reclaimers in California are not that interested in the material. Some are, and we're moving everything that is being generated, but it's kind of a buy. They can buy it at the price that they want to, because we had some folks drop out of the PET thermoform market to concentrate on the bottle market. So it's really a combination of where we sell the material. This is PRCC only, and the fact that we now have this content legislation, and it can be done, but it's much more costly to convert from a thermoform back into a bottle, and it increases the cost pretty substantially. So most of the California reclaimers are concentrating on bottle to bottle.
And Patty, if you could, I understand that it's a PRCC slide with pricing. It'd be great if you have it or others have it, a chart that shows the global pricing for
You can
PET.
go on the plastics markets. Let's see, somebody was just telling me that the price on plastics markets, what is it? Hold on.
I don't want to take a lot of time.
The plastics markets pricing index is probably around 18 cents a pound. So it's different. So it's as was noted by the previous speaker, pricing is very complex, and there's no real simple one issue that makes pricing go up and down. As well, you know that probably better than anyone.
Question why pure PET thermoform bales are going down when we've heard it's huge demand. So I think that's a great question. But we'll have to keep moving because we've got still 3 other speakers.
So as I noted, we did those various grades of material. And I'm sorry that you couldn't see this in the way I had intended, but we have 2 grades that are being underpaid by as much as $126 per ton for their commingled material. That would be the grade B, the first one, grade B, auto sort pull thermoforms manual, and grade B manual positive sort. Those 2 have a high enough CRV content that they are being underpaid the commingled rate, which is around 60% right now. And then we have 3 grades that are being overpaid by as much as $744 per ton. So you can see the $160 per ton quip is not going to have much impact. It won't have any impact because they're getting $744 more per ton than they should be getting because they have such a high percentage, such a low percentage of CRV PET in their bales. That would be the second one, which has 45%, as opposed to the commingled rate, which I said is 60. Grade B with thermoforms manually positive sort was only 37%, and grade B with thermoforms auto sort is only 43%. So all those 3 grades are being overpaid significantly for CRV in their bales.
So just to make sure I understand, you got 5 grades. 2
yes.
You're claiming are being underpaid significantly, and 3 are being overpaid significantly with the current QIP or the current bale rate.
The current commingled rate, that is correct.
So that means that nobody's getting the right amount, basically.
Nobody's getting the right amount. That is correct, which is my next point. Can you see the next slide?
No. There you are.
The commingled rate is inaccurate and it needs updating. We definitely need to revise it to more accurately reflect what's actually happening in the marketplace. A single commingled rate is not going to cut it. Especially if the goal is to go bottle to bottle, which is my second point. California needs healthy CRV buyback centers for bottle to bottle recycling. We have that mandate now. It's in law. And if we want to meet that mandate, then we need the buyback center system to be modernized. We are capturing a large volume of PET in California, but the highest value by far, as I showed you, was through the buyback system. And that's the material that has the highest demand, the highest price, and can most cost effectively go bottle to bottle. And that is what I have. Does anybody have any questions?
That was very helpful. Thank you very much. And we're not going to have much time, so I'm going to just let the 2 commissioners each ask 1 question, please. Commissioner John Levy and then Commissioner Davis.
Okay, just with Patty and PRCC, we were able to host them at our facility on an annual basis. They're doing a California study and a national study, so they have really good information. And I think their information is consistent with the 2017 CalRecycle bale rate study, and I think it really points to the problem that the commingled rate is using a statewide average. And some facilities are getting far more than they deserve. And those with high quality are getting less than they deserve. And that's something that we really need to zero in on how we fix it, not just for PET, but for aluminum, glass, and number two. Because the redemption rate, like Patty was pointing out, with the buyback centers has gone down because we've lost so many recycling centers. The CalRecycle 2020 data shows that we lost 183 million pounds of PET bottles from the redemption program that were never redeemed through redemption centers or curbside programs. So we've just flat out lost them.
I'm sorry,
What's
we're
that?
gonna have to move on. Is there a question for Patty? Because we can talk, we have room at the end to talk for us to.
Yeah, just supporting the data that they present. Their bail studies, they can do a bail 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and just completely do the separation. They have a fantastic process, and CalRecycle's had the opportunity to observe what they've done. So
we're going to do another bail sort in May in Southern California. Anyone who's interested is more than welcome to participate. You have to wear dirty clothes. I mean, clothes you're willing to get dirty, closed-toed shoes, and
I'm sorry, I got to keep this moving. We're not going to get to our other speakers. Commissioner Davis, a question?
Yeah, Penny, your chart showing the content of the A-grade bales, I think if I read it right, it's like a 2% non-PET content. That's what CalRecycle's using for the QIP payment. Do you know if that's due to regulations or why? Any idea why they would set it at that standard for
2%?
Yeah.
If you want to know why the legislature does anything, I'm the wrong person to ask.
This isn't legislation though, is it? I thought this was.
It is legislation. The 2%.
The 2%.
Yes, there are a few, based on our data, this is data that is combined. Based on our data, there are a few places that would qualify, B grade places that would qualify. But not too many.
And in your world, they're still B grade. So.
They are B grade, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Patty. This was very, very informative, and I'm sure this will be brought up, and hopefully you'll stay for our conversation after the presentations.
I just wanted to let you know we will have a full report available within within a week or so, and I will get that to you to distribute.
Great. We're gonna have to move quickly to Laura with NAPCOR. Then Chuck Helgett will get to speak, Camille Herrera. And we're supposed to be ending this and starting our discussion, more thorough discussion by 11:25. So I ask commissioners to please hold any comments to that part of the meeting and only ask questions of the speakers at this point to make sure we clarify and understand what they're saying. So Laura, do you want to go ahead?
I will. And thank you for having me. And I assume everyone can see my screen.
We can. We can't see you. If you could turn your camera on, that would be nice. Know who's speaking.
There we go. All right. So just real quickly, I'm going to cover the Thermoform market. NAPCOR is the National Association for PET Container Resources. I'll touch on the Thermoform market, hurdles to recovery, and then some solutions and active projects that are underway. So I want to, before I really get into PET thermoforms, and we touched on it a little bit in the discussion, is I want to provide a little more background on the PET market in 2020. And 2020 is the last year that, or the most recent year that we had our full rate report. As many of you know, the recycling rate for PET has remained around 30% for the last decade. Last year we were just under 27%. We've seen the pounds recovered increase, but the percentage is remaining stagnant. Overall, though, our PET consumption in end markets is up 10%, and that includes imports. So on a national level, we do not have enough supply to meet all of the demand. Where we see this increase is occurring in bottles. So PET bottles, driven by the
content mandates that are taking effect in California and other states, the consumption in bottles increased by 32% from 2019 to 2020. Sheet and film, which is where the thermoform market would be, has remained flat for recycled PET consumption. And I want to talk a little bit about fiber, which is not the paper fiber, but carpet and apparel usage was up by 2.9%. And as I mentioned, overall collection was down in 2020 due to a number of reasons and challenges. So what does this mean in achieving the post-consumer content goals? And, you know, when you see the high demand that's occurring from the bottle market, and then we've got this short supply. So we feel that PET thermoforms need to be part of the supply conversation. Recycling is happening, certainly in California. We've heard it from a number of the presenters, as well as other parts of North America. The PET thermoforms in curbside bales, Patty shared the California data and some of the bale sorts that they've conducted. We've been measuring as well, and for the last 2 to 3 years, curbside bales on a national level is around 10%. So that's what one could expect if you're buying a curbside bale nationally. We estimate that there is an additional 1.8 billion pounds of PET thermoforms that can and should be recovered. So kind of going back to what Octavio presented with the growing market in thermoforms, it's certainly out there and an opportunity to recapture. Want to just, again, look at the overall market and some of the changes and shifts that we've seen over time. So if you look back to 2004, this was the end markets that were using recycled PET, post-consumer recycled PET. The orange color at the bottom is fiber, and that's traditionally been the largest end consumer for post-consumer PET. Sheet and film in the red. But you can see where the growth has occurred is in the food and beverage bottles up near the top. So we've seen that continue to grow. The thermoforms recovered in US and Canada. So just looking specifically at PET thermoforms, and again, this is the information that we have from our surveys. Since 2011, you can see the blue line, what's been reclaimed in US and Canada has continued to grow. So in 2020, we saw a 6.2% increase over 2019 with 134 million pounds recovered by reclaimers. We also in 2020, we quantified the amount of PET thermoforms going into sheet and film. We had 478 million pounds coming from bottles and 14.5 million pounds coming from the thermoform clean wash flake or rPET from thermoforms. So it's something that we want to track and be able to measure, you know, what is being used and back into this tray-to-tray concept.
Laura, quick question on that previous slide. Do you track thermoform recovery in Mexico? Because Octavio's slide showed a pretty large infrastructure of reclaimers down in Mexico and very few in California.
Correct. So this does not track Mexico. It is a suggestion that we want to incorporate into the 2021 survey, which we'll have published in the fall of 2022. But that's a good point and something that we want to understand better.
Yeah, just understanding why there's so many facilities opening up in Mexico from a competitive basis, and then any concerns of environmental controls that they have to make sure that they're adhering to standards similar to the US and Canada.
I'd like to add to that. It'd be great to know too, again, who's testing to make sure this is really food grade and safe.
Correct. Yeah, and that responsibility really lies within the converter. Certainly the reclaimer as they're selling, but also the converter of the whether it's film, pellet, and certifying that that is acceptable for use in those products.
So it's the converter, it's up to them to self-certify?
There are standards, my understanding for the thermoform market, the thermoformer would, like D6 had presented through their decontamination unit, they could qualify that way, or they could be using pellet or flake that is already certified as suitable for L&O. So there's a number of standards.
Who certifies it?
It is certified through the company, the converter, that would ultimately be selling that package. They would have to certify that, and then the brand owner certainly would have their quality inspect and review the documents to ensure that that is being met.
We've just seen a whole lot of no sheriff in town when it comes to labeling and other stuff. So this is another area where I get worried about self-certification. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, and I think we've covered this quite a bit already, so I know we're pressed for time, but, you know, thermoforms are getting collected a number of different ways, you know, and we've talked about this. So I'm not really going to spend much time on this other than point out, again, this is on a national level, and certainly the PRCC bale sort had shown some pretty high numbers, thermoform as part of a bale, which is to be expected in a deposit state, CRV bale. On average nationally, you know, we are seeing reclaimers, because of the supply, increase their acceptance of post-consumer thermoforms as part of a bale. I would say if you're a bottle-to-bottle, you want that to be 0 or less than the 2% as noted. But we are seeing it, that upper limit vary based on the tight supply. So some are accepting a little bit more if they're able to run it. Some of the hurdles, we've talked about the lookalike packages, things like optical sortation can certainly keep PET in the recovery stream. We've got labels, adhesives, and inks to consider. We've talked about that, I know in the past. And really, you know, progress is being made as brands adopt best practices. And I strongly recommend utilizing APR's Design for Recyclability guidelines. IV, intrinsic viscosity. So this is where you see a little lower IV with thermoforms than that of bottles. So additional steps may be required to boost the IV or solid state, the flake, to improve that. And then the mechanical issues, the visual of the PET thermoforms in the bin in Octavio's slide showed so many different sizes and shapes, and that can present a problem if you're coming, you know, if it's mixed together and running through the line. I want to touch on a couple active projects. I know the committee is looking to make a recommendation. There is work underway being led by RRS and the Food Service Packaging Institute, really trying to understand some of the challenges and hurdles, how best to recover PET thermoforms and process them. There's current work underway in Columbia, South Carolina, and I believe there's a West Coast observational study in the works for early 2022 that will take place in California. There's also a PET recycling coalition that's forming. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of this. The Recycling Partnership has put this together, and a number of industry groups are participating and really helping to raise the PET thermoform access rate, develop end markets, and ultimately optimize the PET recycling system across the board. So improve the capture of PET, increase the availability of bottle grade rPET as well. So I think it's, you know, things that we've all been talking about. And, you know, we see in California, you know, there's definitely a commitment in brands. There's a commitment by reclaimers who are working through to use the PET thermoform content and working through the challenges. you know, I don't have a survey of data of this, but anecdotally, most sheet and film converters that we talk to prefer the PET thermoform only bales, just as the bottle-to-bottle manufacturers, they prefer that clean stream. So there is a desire, I think, to be able to introduce the feedstock in a controlled manner to be able to achieve the percentage of post-consumer content needed. You know, at the same time, I hear from some that like the B grade with the higher content if the line is designed to process them appropriately.
Okay, we have to wrap it up.
Yep, and I'm wrapping it up right here. So NABCOR does not have a policy solution in place, but we do think it's important and imperative to convey that thermoforms need to stay within the collection process. We agree with some of the comments that were stated earlier. Better separation will increase not only recycling, but improve quality. We see that for both bottles as well as for thermoforms. And then just, you know, these are precious molecules, and we need to make sure that they get recovered so that we can have a strong circular economy.
Thank you very much, Laura. I appreciate that very much. And I think we've heard repeatedly it'd be, you know, we need to keep it in the system, but it costs money to keep it in the system, and who's going to pay? This is really what it's going to come down to. Right. So let's move on. Thank you so much, and hopefully you'll stay for the Q&A. We'll turn it over now to Chuck Helgett. He did not have a PowerPoint presentation with Republic Services, but we'll let him speak to this, and then Camille Herrera with Driscoll's will follow, and she has a PowerPoint. So thank you, Chuck, for being with us, and feel free to share your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Commissioners, and I apologize for not having a presentation, but then the simplicity of just me talking with my face in front of you is probably working better than anything. I promise to be painfully brief. I also wanted to thank Patty and Laura for their presentations. I thought well done, very informative in many areas of agreement there. So Republic has been engaged in discussions surrounding thermoform recyclability for the past year, including operational discussions with many producers, including Octavio, and then also in policy discussions surrounding AB 478. And I'm not going to dwell on 478, but I entered our letter into the record so that the commissioners could take a look at some of the concerns that were expressed during the last legislative session, and hopefully we can avoid some of the mistakes that, not mistakes, but some of the disputes that were made during the past year. We were asked to comment a bit on market conditions, thermoform plastics, and in brief, and I'm not a market expert, by the way, but I did rely on Pete Keller, who is. The market is evolving, but lacking additional incentives such as CRD payments. The current West Coast market price of around $19 a pound simply doesn't support the cost of collection, processing, and transportation. We did see similarly, and I think this backs a little bit of what Patty was talking about, that 19 cents a pound is also the rate that we're seeing in the Southwest area, including California, for PET as well. So there's a similar line, parallel line, or equal line right now for those two commodities. So thermoform enters our recycling system in many forms, and I think we need to keep that in mind. We talk about clamshells and those types of more cumbersome types of forms of plastic material, but we also have lids and caps and many other forms of thermoforms. So I think it's important to decide if we're talking about sorting and collecting and separating thermoform, what are we really talking about? And it's important also to remember that each MRF is very different. And so when we're talking about separating materials, and I think Commissioner Oseguera mentioned early on, it's a simplistic approach to everybody's problem is let's put a container at the curbside. But that's really not practical, and it's really not fiscally or operationally practical to do that type of thing. So the solutions we have to decide on need to have a practicality to them, also a fiscal responsibility. Everything is going to cost prices. So from a thermoform perspective, can we separately collect it? Can we process it and bale it separately? Certainly. But what's the cost? and who's going to pay. And I think Commissioner Sanborn, you said that just before I came on. And that, I think, is one of the lingering thoughts that I believe needs to be discussed throughout any discussion of how we separate out and identify thermoform. I think one of the other issues that we need to think about in some degree is that, again, not all MRFs are created equal. We're in the process of rebuilding a MRF in Northern California, and will we be able to have a lower contamination rate at that MRF? Yes, because we're going to be adding new equipment. We also have space-constrained material recovery facilities in Northern California and in Southern California. So one of the things that we have done is we've done bale breaks, and our bale breaks indicate that we will have as a de minimis amount of thermoform in some bales and as much as 12 to 15% contamination in thermoform. Now, I've not seen anything above 15, but it varies from facility to facility. So going back to the commingled rate discussion, which is one of the high points I think that we all can confront when we're talking about thermoform, is that fixing this problem by doing some sort of commingled rate mandate or restrictions in our ability to access commingled rate makes absolutely zero sense. There's no CRV on thermoform. If there were, the 19 cents a pound plus a CRV value may make this, worth recycling. But at this point in time, it's not. And so penalizing material recovery facilities in some way by limiting their access to the commingled rate makes no sense to us at all. I would agree, though, with Patty's conclusion is that a one-size-fits-all commingled rate across the state doesn't seem to be equitable either. And so I think there is some value in reviewing the commingled rate and trying to make it a fair rate again. We did have, I think, a fair rate back in the day, but CalRecycle decided it was too expensive and moved on to a statewide rate. So I'm going to stop with that, other than just add a couple of thoughts to your discussion that occurred to me as I was listening to these other presentations. And product design has always been a big deal for me, and I think Ms. Ferreira may talk about that a little bit possibly, but we really think that product manufacturers, packagers should come to the material recovery facilities up front and talk to us about what we can move through this system without assuming that the system can be adjusted to accommodate their particular type of packaging. And also on the backside of this, it's interesting to hear what we can create out of thermoform, but what are we creating on the medical side? Is that reusable? Is that what type of material are we, turning or products are we turning these material into the second time around? And I think the last comment again is just to reinforce the fact that the commingled rate is an important, very important piece for our facilities. It funds a lot of our recycling efforts. The CRV processing payments are a critical aspect of our funding. And anything that would deprive us of those revenues or add to our costs at our facilities gets passed through the system to the bottom, which are the local ratepayers. And so you need to keep that in mind as well. With that, I'll stop because I know you're time constrained. Commissioner Sanborn, I'm not going to be able to stick around very long. I've got an 11:30 appointment that I've got to walk off to. But again, I really appreciate this time.
Thank you. And I do want to support, I've said repeatedly that we can't close the loop on materials if we don't close the loop on the conversation and everybody, all the stakeholders in the process, which starts with the manufacturers choosing a material and a design for a product or a package that you all have to deal with. So I really do underscore the importance of the manufacturers starting to really reach out to those of us at the back end of the system to try and, ward off any problems. Don't put things on the market before we're sure we've got a way to recycle it. And your point about not downcycling. We can't get to a circular economy if we just keep stumbling things down the hill. It's still going to end up in disposal. We've got to actually close the loop for good. So thank you all. Excellent points. And Commissioner Donlevy had a question. We'll keep it short and then go to our last presenter.
Yes, thank you, Chuck. Thank you for participating in the discussion today. Very excited about with what Republic is doing, upgrading facilities. I know Republic does a great job monitoring quality levels at all the different facilities to get the best product out there. You had mentioned that all facilities are different And with the commingled rate, so should all facilities be paid the same, or should each facility be paid based on their quality? It sounds like you were saying each facility should be paid based on their quality. So a different rate for each facility. Is that my understanding of what you were saying?
Well, that's what it was back in the day before CalRecycle went to a statewide rate. I don't know if that's the best solution today. I do think there needs to be a dialogue on commingled rate and how to increase fairness in the rate. But at the same time, when we look at the charts that Patty presented, and we talk about, I think the dialogue that I've heard in the past is that people are stealing money. They're stealing it because the commingled rate allows them to steal, or somehow this is a huge disincentive for separating thermoform. I don't think that's a valuable conversation at all. I think that looking at the commingled rate and finding out a fair way to reward the people that have invested in equipment and invested in making sure that their contaminations are low, we need to incentivize them to do that. And I always have said that throughout the discussions last year. So let's look for incentives that would get us to where we need to be with thermoform rather than penalizing people that aren't going there.
Well, if there's an incentive for good quality, how do you address poor quality?
Well, if you're incentivizing good quality or disincentivizing poor quality.
Okay, but if their actual results are lower.
If you have a
should they be
question,
paid?
I'm sorry, we're going to have to move on, but Commissioner, if you have any more questions for Mr. Helget, that would work. And then we've got comments and others that want to speak, so I'm going to have to move it on so we can get to the policy discussion in a little bit.
And I would add too that Commissioner Dunleavy, I'm always available for a phone call, so don't hesitate.
Thank you so much. And Commissioner Davis, did you have a question for Commissioner?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify. You said the 19 cents for thermoforms is not adequate. Is it because of the comparison to the PET bottle price, or I just wanted to clarify that. Maybe I was confused by the statement.
No, it's a good point, and I the economics of it we need to sit down and try to figure out. But at 19 cents right now, to pay for the collection, processing, and transportation of thermoform to get it to a thermoform plant is just not adequate. Now, what is adequate? I think we've asked that question 100 times, and I still don't have a good answer for that.
Is it because 19 cents doesn't incentivize the change from including the thermoforms in the bottle bales, or is 19 cents just not an adequate value?
It's just not an adequate value at this point to incentivize us to make sure that we're getting a reasonable
to incentivize the change. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I think we've got a public comment or a question for Republic before Chuck leaves. He's got to go.
Yeah, we have 2 public comments. I'll read the one for Republic first. We do not have the name of the person who submitted this public comment, and it says, questions for Republic. Can we control the % of thermoform in the curbside bales? What extra cost this will bring? Controlling and increasing the % thermoform in the bales will reduce the direct cost on landfill. So may the extra cost be paid by its own savings?
I don't know if that's a question or a statement, but I would have to do the math on whether or not whatever the tip fees are at landfills, or I just don't know.
There's a lot that goes into that formula. I think what they're trying to get at is if you pull thermoforms out and you have savings in the volume, isn't that kind of balancing out? I would promote basically what you said earlier, Chuck, is, if the producers want this stuff back, they're going to have to help pay for it because there's really no other money in the system at this point. It's like, I think Commissioner Segura said, we're pulling from the same pots. So we've really got to look at adding new to the pot if we're going to have more sorts, and it's expensive. It's not that easy. So thank you, Chuck. Really appreciate your time, and we can go to the next public comment, and I know you've got to go to a meeting. You need to.
Perfect. The next public comment is from Daniela Sanchez from DAC Americas. We are one of the biggest reclaimers in the U.S. for bottle-to-bottle resin. Currently, we are recycling thermoforms coming into the curbside material, so it's possible to have thermoforms back into bottles. However, as it has been mentioned, we need a defined thermoform content in the bales, and certainly having mono layers will solve several quality issues. Any ideas on how to incentivize MRFs to control the percent of thermoforms in the bales?
Question of the day. So thank you, Daniela. We'll talk about that when we get to our discussion on policy right after our last presenter, which is, thank you again, Chuck, Camille Herrera with Driscoll's. Thank you so much for joining us. And please go ahead through your presentation. I'll ask commissioners to hold questions until the end for all of our commenters now. Thank you. Are you showing your screen, Camille, or do you want the Cowher? There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, sharing my screen. So thank you so much for having me.
It's got
again, my name's Camille.
There you go.
Oh, okay. All right. So thanks again for having me. My name is Camille Herrera, and I'm the Packaging Development and Sustainability Manager with Driscoll's. And so I wanted to share a little bit, we've covered with a lot of our colleagues like Octavio, what's going on with clamshell to clamshell recycling, and I wanted to share what Driscoll's is doing in this market space. I think most of you know us from trips to the grocery store, buying our berries. We are headquarters in Watsonville, California. We're a family-owned business with over 100 years of farming heritage. And I wanted to touch on why the PET clamshell is ubiquitous berry packaging. It's balancing functionality with sustainability for us. So berries are a really delicate fruit to transport, and they're very challenging in that way. So the rigid plastic allows us to move berries in state, nationally, and in North America as well. Protects the berries. And plastic does protect the berries, and the material needs to be able to handle different temperature changes. One thing that's little known about berries is they're packed in field. So literally the only person that touches the berries besides the consumer is the person that harvests the berries and puts them in the containers. And what this means is that the packaging has to withstand a variety of temperature and moisture changes in its journey. For example, packages are warehoused in unconditioned warehouses during the summer, can get over 100 degrees, but then they go out into the field where there can be a lot of moisture, a lot of mist. They might sit in a rancher's truck where again, the temperature can get to be over 100 degrees. And also they have to go through our cold chain where it drops to 32 degrees Fahrenheit and there's moisture, berries themselves contain moisture. And we need to have the right amount of moisture, which is allowed by the vents that are able to be in this material. Another thing that's really important for our berry business is that PET thermoforms are clear and consumers can see the berries. People buy produce with their eyes. People pick up the berry containers, they turn them over, you want to check what's moldy, what's not. And what we've discovered through pilots of alternative materials is that if people can't see the berries, they won't buy them. And so it's really important that we have at least one window where people can really see the berries. Even then, they'll tend to open the packages. And historically, PET berry thermoforms have had the highest percentage of recycled content of any food container in the United States. Berry clamshells came into being in the 1990s, and that's when there was actually a lot of material available from recycled bottles that didn't have a market. And so that material, again, mentioning the IV differences, was perfect to go into thermoforms. And, when we look at our options, PET thermoforms are one of the most recyclable options. Again, there's an asterisk, they're not recyclable everywhere. That's something that we as Driscoll's are working towards. And before I move on to talk more about our efforts in thermoforms, I did want to touch on, again, why we're in them. We're in them for food safety. This commission is concerned with human health issues, such as PFAS, and with greenwashing. We're in this material for food safety because it protects the berries and it also doesn't have major human health side effects. We would not switch to a fiber-based alternative that had PFAS coating. We would, not switch to another material that might have other health effects or would have a significantly reduced recyclability. And we also, wouldn't want to switch to a material that was advertised as compostable when there's such limited industrial composting facilities. And even of those, composting facilities are reluctant to take packaging. So Driscoll's has been on this journey since 2017. Again, that's around the time China's sword came out and people were really learning what was actually happening with their recycling. And we learned that even though their clamshells contained recycled content, it wasn't coming from thermoforms. So we formed a cross-industry alliance with other berry companies, MRFs, packaging manufacturers, and associations like the APR. And we really wanted to understand two questions. Why weren't clamshells getting recycled and what we needed to do to make sure they were recycled? And what would it take to create a viable supply chain for recycled thermoforms, starting with demand? And what we learned through the APR was that there were three key problems with thermoforms. That was why they weren't getting recycled. Paper labels and adhesives act as a contaminant in the recycling process. And the exciting news about that particular finding is that's completely within our control as a berry company. We can order different kinds of labels. We've worked with the APTR. Again, the APTR design recommendations encourage the use of BOPP labels. And they have washable adhesive, so they're better. So that's one great solution that's very much in our berry company's control. The second challenge we learned was, as people have mentioned, intrinsic viscosity. That difference shows up in the flaking process at a reclaimer, and then if it's not addressed there, it shows up the extrusion process of the manufacturer and causes problems. So the solution to that is a little more long-term. It's collaboration with reclaimers and manufacturers to find the right kinds of blends that will work for packaging. Then the last issue is more infrastructure. As you've heard before, PET, it looked like PET thermoforms were getting recycled because they were getting collected with PET bottles. However, everything that we've discussed with other people shows that PET bottlers really don't want more than 10% thermoforms in their bales that they're processing. So to really get the most amount of PET recycled, it's beneficial to have two separate bales, one for PET and one for bottles. So again, that's a longer term type of collaboration that we've been working on with our suppliers. And so what we took from these three learnings was we needed to be recycle ready in order to even have these other steps happen. And we took these findings to the wider berry industry in 2020. The entire berry industry, and I do mean the entire berry industry in North America and in South America, and including berries like cranberries, committed to having 100% recycle-ready packaging by 2025. So this means that every berry package that comes into California in 2025 is going to be recycle ready is the goal. And primarily this means changing labels from paper to BOPP, but it also means researching different kinds of pads for things like raspberries and blackberries that are used to soak up the juice, and so on. And this pre-competitive collaboration really allowed us to get on board at people's scale as they were able to. So large producers like us are able to get on board early. The more we get on board, the lower the cost. Mid-size and small producers can then get on board. And you see these effects that allow everybody to get on board over a period of time. Driscoll's realized that it wasn't enough to make sure that our clamshells were 100% recycle ready. We had to make sure that they were getting recycled. And so we told our suppliers in 2019 that by the end of 2020, we wanted them to reach post-consumer recycled content specifically from PET thermoforms of 10%. And we also started the label transition from paper to BOPP. So almost 2 years later, I'm excited to share that in November of 2021, we're maintaining approximately 39% post-consumer recycled content. New thermoforms are coming in with post-consumer recycled content from PET thermoforms, around like 9.5%. Early on in the year, we had a lot more access, so they were higher. Towards the end of the year, it started to go down. So it's been a bit lower, and that's the overall average. And right now, despite the increased demand for bottles, we are seeing that actually significantly affecting us. We're still able to maintain a minimum 30% recycled content from post-consumer bottles. So our goals and our commitment to the industry and to our suppliers is that we want to reach 25% recycled content specifically from PET thermoforms by 2025. We know that MRFs and the entire recycling supply chain look towards long-term demand before making investments, and we want to assure people that this is a material we are in for the long haul. Internally, our plan goes to 2030 and increases the use of thermoform recycled content. I'm actively working on recycled pads and pad adhesives to increase the recyclability. We're participating in the RRS study that's been mentioned before, and additionally, we're signatories of the Ellen MacArthur's Global Commitment, members of How to Recycle, and we've made pledges, the very sustainable pledge. Since we started working on PET thermoforms, the price in California has gone up since 2019. So we've seen that we've been able to make a change in the market, and we look forward to helping increase the recycling rates of PET thermoforms by continuing on this journey and stimulating market demand. So I know we've got limited time. I'm available for any other questions now or, at a later time if anything else comes up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camille, and thanks to everybody in the berry industry for coming together and working on this. That's fantastic. So we're actually out of time for this agenda item, and we were going to get to our process for the rest of this committee. So I'm going to ask again, because we keep having basically two commissioners with questions who are very interested in this, but please just ask questions of Camille if you would know at this point, and then we'll move off of this agenda item and on to our discussion. So we'll start with Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Donlevy. And then Commissioner Oseguera.
I think that my asterisk was from the earlier, so I'll pass.
Oh, okay, great. So then it's Commissioner Donlevy, Oseguera, and then Lapis.
Okay, Camille, thank you. A wonderful presentation. Appreciate what Driscoll's is doing in the industry, pushing the bar up for post-consumer content in their products. You mentioned recycle ready. Could you just review that again? What do you mean by recycle ready in your products? And then I know prior to the bankruptcy with Replanet, there were some discussions about a pilot program for your thermoforms to go to redemption centers. Any further discussion to look at thermoforms going back to redemption centers, or maybe even opting into the bottle bill as a way to get separation and collection done cleanly so you can generate enough material for your 100% goal, which would be great. And then even with thermoforms, we're still using oil to package fruit and food. Is there any innovation or trends to convert from plastic clamshells to fiber clamshells? I know the mushroom industry has switched from styrofoam to cardboard. Is there any trend or innovation with the berries and the packaging that you're doing to move into a fiber-based model that could be more easily recycled with mixed paper as opposed to continuing to use oil-based product?
Okay, so I'll start with the questions and go in reverse. So as I mentioned, we are piloting alternative materials. However, the challenge of moisture and temperature change is extremely difficult. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of materials advertised as being fiber-based, but as you dig into them, they have PFAS to prevent the moisture and oil. They have layers of plastic to prevent moisture. And so we do have some pilots out there at the moment, but getting them to scale has not happened yet. And so we are actively working in the space. However, when we look at the timelines for actualizing a package and converting the majority of our packaging to something else, it's much longer than the amount of time it would actually take to make some differences in PET thermoform recycling and packaging. So we're a berry company. That's what our goal is. We've had some deep dives into understanding policy and legislation. At the end of the day, what we support is increasing recycling rates for PET thermoforms. So we know that can look many different ways, and we're excited to continue working on that. And then your first question, oh yes, recycle ready. So recycle ready for a strawberry, for Driscoll's. For a strawberry or a blueberry container means changing the label from paper to BOPP and using a washable adhesive. So that's really the number one way to be recycle ready for a strawberry and a blueberry container. For our raspberries and our blackberry containers, we need to make that label change. And we're also working on finding an alternative for the pad, because the pad causes the same contamination problems as a paper label. It sinks with the PET, and the idea is hopefully any contamination would float and then be skimmed off. And so that's an area of research that I'm actively looking into at this moment.
Okay, we've got other commissioners with questions, so I think we're going to have to move on quickly. Running out of time. Commissioner Osigura and then Lapis.
I don't think it's going to be it'll be a quick question. I think it might, someone can provide the information later, Heidi, to save time. It was just interesting to see one of the graphs, Camille, it was before yours, but I think you touched on it also. But what was used previously to what's being used now in terms of materials, right? I mean, it shows almost an explosion of using X type of material at a certain point. So how are berries and strawberries and so forth, shipped and processed previously to moving to this type of material? So once again, if you don't have the answer now, it's okay. Just in terms of the graphs that are being shown, it seems like an explosion of usage of clamshells. And what was done before? And really just a question for my understanding. Thank you.
Yes. So Driscoll's has been in clamshells since the 1990s. And I think that's early on when most berries went to. So I think we're prior to some of the explosions that we've seen in other food goods with clamshells. I can't speak to much else. Prior to that, Driscoll's was in the berry baskets, and moving to these clamshells is what allowed us to go nationally and in some cases even international with our product.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lapis, and then our public comments, and we've got to move on from there.
Hey, Camille, thank you so much for presenting. I guess I'm struggling with something, and I really appreciate that you guys have been a lot more transparent than a lot of other folks in terms of your goals and where you want to go, and appreciate that you want to have a recyclable package and that it's really important for you as a company. But I don't believe the industry, and I can't remember specifically if Driscoll, but I don't believe the industry supported 478. I think actually might have opposed the bill. And so short of something like 478 or inclusion in the bottle bill or some other drastic change, this package is not currently recyclable, and it'll be illegal to be labeled recyclable within a couple of years, and it'll be probably banned not long after that. So I guess I'm wondering about that disconnect. I mean, I understand the waste haulers concerned about the commingle rate and their opposition to 478. That obviously isn't your concern. So I'd love to get your take on that.
So Driscoll stands with the California Strawberry Commission with AB 478. And the intention of the bill is definitely really well. However, it ultimately didn't address the supply issues happening at the community and MRF level. And as you can say, with the language of SB 343, that leaves PT Thermoform users in a precarious position at this time.
So then what do you see as the solution? I mean, it seems like you have a short fuse that's running out of time before this product is not recyclable and eventually before this product is banned. How do we get to your goals from where we are today?
I mean, that's one of the questions that we're wondering too. Again, we are a berry company. That's our focus, and that's where our expertise is. And so we're doing what we can in the space that we have control to help make a difference and, be transparent about what we're doing and what our goals are. I talk to Octavio almost weekly. We talk to all our suppliers almost weekly to understand what they're facing, what the challenges are, and what's going on. So, we want to continue to be part of this participation and really, understand from other people, what would work and what can we, help support.
Okay. Well, I think at this point, I'm going to move this on. We're really over time now, and we're getting close to noon, which is the hard stop. Literally, this whole thing shuts down. So I'm going to thank Camille and everybody who presented very, very much for their time today and putting all these presentations together. They're all on the Google Drive, so everybody publicly can see them. But we really do need to move on to agenda item number 5, which is where we were going to discuss the process for the Thermoform policy proposal and development and next steps. And I had asked Commissioner Davis, who had been working on this, Commissioner Don Levy, if he could pull it up really quickly so that everybody could see where we had left it from last year in our last meeting in December. And based on information we were given today, are any of the preliminary recommendations, maybe we should go down and scroll down to the preliminary recommendations, Commissioner Davis, and see if there's anything there that we can all agree on, because I think, honestly, we've got a tough one here, and there may be things that we can agree on in the short term now and make recommendations to the commission for a vote on the 19th, since this has been heard several times, if there's not major changes. And then parts that we might need to just pull out and have a separate debate over that will take longer than we will have today, and probably should be done with the full commission at this point. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner Davis. Maybe we just go through these proposals and then let the commissioners speak as to whether they have any opposition or can agree with these draft proposals, or if not, we put them to the side, and the ones we can agree on we leave in there and bring to the commission on the 19th, and the ones we pull aside we can discuss how to handle. Does that sound reasonable, everybody? And you might want to turn on your screens at this point, because I can't see, so if I don't see you, I don't know what's going on. So the first proposal in the original draft was that CalRecycle should either resume the recycled content. Yeah, go ahead, and go ahead, John.
Yeah, they either resume the individual commingle rate studies for MRFs separating thermoforms, or establish a bottle bale commingle rate that applies to those MRFs. The definitions are up above. The bottle bale rate basically is, similar to what Patty Moore showed, lower percentage of non-PET bottles.
If committee members could turn on your screen, I'd like to get a read on you, because it seems to me that we probably would have agreement. I'm going to ask if we have agreement on the fact that the commingled rate, based on what Patty shared, there's issues there. Now, how we fix it, I'm not sure if we would agree on that, so but do we agree that that commingled rate is an issue that needs to be addressed, or is it just something nobody wants to touch, I guess? Commissioner Donlevy, maybe you want to say something?
Yes, I think item number 1 and number 6 are kind of one and the same, and it should be a commingled rate based on the facility output for all facilities, but it shouldn't apply just to PET bales. It should apply to aluminum, glass, PET, and HDPE, because CalRecycle, they did their bale study in 2017. It shows contamination is high, and they estimated that it was an approximate overpayment for contamination of over $10 million from the fund. So I think 1 and 6 should be combined, but it should be expanded for all materials to have a commingled rate based on each facility's output.
Is there anybody who disagrees with that or wants to speak to that proposal?
I just think, 1 and 6 are very broad, Heidi. I mean, I think it's an easy statement to make that says it should apply to all materials. And what does that look like would be very, very, very broad. And I'd have serious concerns to be able to agree to that. Now, I think different folks have presented saying there should be a mechanism that pays for this that is separate from funds that are currently in place. And that would be something that I'd be willing to entertain. But now opening up the whole system for all materials, how that looks like, what's that paid, it just would be something I would just not be comfortable with. And we're talking here about thermoforms, and we're talking about whether there should be an incentive payment or a payment of some sort or a mechanism that actually covers for the additional costs and to get to the material that folks need. And so I'm willing to entertain that. But when it gets so broad, I have a different perspective on that.
So as it comes to just thermoforms, rather leave the commingled rate to be debated with the bottle bill and those other things, and then just deal with thermoforms separately. And we've talked repeatedly about there's other sources of money out there, like the manufacturers, producers, and others that could help pay for some of this infrastructure to get the thermoforms out.
That is correct, Heidi.
Okay, just so, and then I think Commissioner Kabelkoff, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say this has been a great presentation. I learned a little bit more than I knew before. I do enjoy that there is a demand out there for the thermoforms. And what's confusing to me is that the demand is rising, but the price is going down. And, you know, I heard multiple times today that, you know, who's going to pay for that? And as the MRFs are going to look at separating more so the bottles from the thermoforms, there's a disincentive, obviously, for MRFs to do that with the price going down. And to go into a different commingled rate for each individual MRF may make sense, and but you're still disincentivizing MRFs at that point to separate a material type that has a consistent low value that's starting to decrease. But I see the demand for the bottle-to-bottle, and I see the demand today for the thermoforms of food grade and keeping those two streams separate. I do obviously support that, and we heard today that there's the support for the collection of the thermoforms in the curbside bins. I do agree with Commissioner Oseguera that the idea to broaden it to glass, aluminum, HDPE during this PET session would be problematic for myself, knowing that we've just took a big bite of the PET apple today. And I think the individual MRF commingled rate could work as long as it doesn't, again, hurt other material facilities that have not come up to speed yet, because that material will ultimately end up in the landfill, and that's not our goal. So that's where I'm coming from today.
Okay, Commissioner Lopez.
On like commingled rate, I think my organization has disagreed with some of the other commissioners on whether or not it's a good idea. And, you know, given that we are a consensus-driven group, I'm not sure there's necessarily going to be a huge consensus there unless I'm wrong. But that aside, so I guess maybe my opinions and commingle rate aside, I think that the transformational thing here is the minimum content mandate, right? It is 5. And I think we should make 5 number 1 and really highlight that as our number 1 priority. I mean, we saw in Patty's presentation the impact of the beverage container recycled content mandate on the prices and the consumption. So I know that's kind of a symbolic change, but I think 5 should be 1 and should be our main focus of recommendations.
Okay, we have 7 minutes. I tend to agree, except for one thing is that if we don't touch the commingled rate, which we were just told is basically off on every category, at least by one presenter that does this for a living, how are the berry manufacturers or whoever going to agree or support a recycled content mandate if they aren't confident they can get that much? I think that's really what this is coming down to. And so then I guess the question I would have for them is, how much are you willing to help us, you know, invest in the equipment to sort this stuff out? It's not free. And I see Commissioner Ferrante, who hasn't spoken much this meeting. Let me turn to her for a moment.
Thanks, Heidi. I think you just hit it. And in fact, I've heard very few people today, apart from you, mentioned that it's the producers and the manufacturers that really should be paying for the cost of separating, cost of processing, the cost of recycling this material. Apart from the commingled rate issue, which was significant last year during the AB 478 discussions, part of the issue was we kept getting reassured by thermoform producers that the market is there, the market is there. But what the rest of us were saying was, well, you know, if the market were there, the MRFs would be separating it. It's not there. Okay, well, the market's going to get there. But now we've seen today that the market has actually gone down on that. So I think very simply it comes down to, as Alex said, it's not about moving money around or pulling money from the same pot to different places. It's about more money that's needed into the infrastructure, into the equipment, into the cost of recycling, and those that want the material are going to have to pay that cost.
Yeah, I think, well, it sounds like we should move aside the commingled rate. There is not agreement on that, even from this committee. So is everybody in agreement with that, that that is a separate conversation?
Heidi, can I clarify? I believe we're talking about number 6. The current first item is actually how do we go forward with rates for MRFs that are separating the thermoforms? The broader discussion about changing the commingled rate basis statewide is number 6. So what I believe I'm hearing is that number 6 is the stumbling block. Number 1 is intended to reward the facilities that are doing the separation, specifically for thermoforms and from
right,
the
but I just heard Commissioner Lapis say that he's not agreeing to bring up the.
Well, he wanted to move 5 to 1. That's fine. You know, I mean, it's the deck chairs, but and then 3 and 4 are, you know, the manufacturers do have to step up. It's part of the recommendation. So
well, we have 3 minutes, so it sounds like we're not going to resolve this today. So here's my suggestion. We can choose to keep meeting as a Thermoform group. I think we got great presentations today that certainly helped me with new information. I hope it helped all of you and all of our stakeholders that were watching, because we all want to solve this problem. The good news is I feel like we have a lot of good people here and everybody's really trying. The berry manufacturers are here and we're all trying to figure this out. The question is, what does this commission do with the current policy we have? We can get it on, you know, it's on the agenda with everything else on the 19th, so we can have a full commission discussion. But I'm thinking maybe we need a couple of the commissioners, since for some reason I still don't understand, only 2 of us can have a meeting from this committee to talk offline about revisiting this. My suspicion is it would be a better to have somebody from the hauling community and somebody else, because that would give 2 different perspectives on what comes back to us. Would that be helpful? Because I know it's been Commissioners Dunleavy and Davis, but I'm thinking maybe somebody else.
It's actually you and I, Heidi. You and I.
But I think it shouldn't be. I think it should be one of the haulers. I think that they have, this is very important to them. So
no, you know, again,
commissioner that would like to work with Commissioner Davis to try and look at this and see if there's anything you can come back with on the 19th. Commissioner Segura raised his hand. Yeah. Okay. So we just have a 2-person committee on thermoforms that switched, where I'm off and Commissioner Segura is on. And so that I would hope that you 2 can talk and see and revisit this based on all this new information and bring back, and we can have a healthy discussion at the next commission meeting on the 19th with the full commission. Because at this point, unless there's new data requests or information we don't have in order to come up with policy recommendations, I really think at this point, it just ought to go back to the full commission and we decide what we can or cannot agree on and then move that on.
Commissioner Samard, I think we'll, you know, with Commissioner Davis, we'll be able to come back with what we've heard from Commissioner Lapis, you know, Kalpikoff, Ferrante, Dunleavy, yourself, and others that presented that did excellent presentations today, and come back with something that's workable and that folks can come around and get to consensus. I think we can get there. It's just there's some things that probably is a different topic that should stay a different topic, and we'll work on that with Commissioner Davis.
Right, and it seems to me so much keeps coming back to the bottle bill. That's like a whole separate thing. So maybe that's something else we can talk about at the commission level. Okay, we are literally 1 minute away and we will be cut off. Are there any data requests from the commissioners? Is there anything more you think we need in order to have a more healthy discussion around this? Okay, seeing none, I think we have wrapped it up. So to close off the meeting, I want to thank all the commissioners and committee members, all the people who took the time to present, especially working over the holidays on presentations, et cetera. And we are going to bring this back up at our meeting on the 19th. I don't foresee any future meetings of this committee unless we just decide to do that at the meeting on the 19th. And hopefully we can just bring up a new proposal with some different changes proposed by Commissioners Osigura and Davis based on the conversation we had here today. With that, it's noon. We have to sign off or they'll cut us off. Thanks, everybody. Have a nice lunch. Well done.
Thank you.
See you on the 19th.